Chapter 1225. Jing Yunzhao's move was something Li Wenbo didn't expect. That was because when they were seeking treatment that day, other than a reporter that was arranged beforehand, there was no one else. Furthermore, that reporter left after taking a video. He didn't take any random photos. As for the other patients, there was no need to even mention them. No one dared to mess around in front of Li Wenbo. Therefore, other than Jing Yunzhao, no one else could have taken a photo of them seeking treatment. However, Jing Yunzhao did not let him get a hold of her at all. It was useless even if she was the one who posted the photo in private. Crane Hall. It's Crane Hall again. Li Wenbo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the media praising Crane Hall. Back then, he had obtained all the other clinics, but this one was given to Yu Fu by Jing Wenyue in advance. Otherwise, he would not have watched such a big piece of meat fall into someone else's hands. Moreover, if he forcefully took it back, it would definitely make the people of the Jing group unhappy, so he had been holding back, but now, Crane Hall was provoking him. Li Wenbo's face was gloomy. After a while, he arranged for people to entertain the medical professors from abroad. In this day and age, foreign farts were fragrant. Jing Yunzhao could use him as an example, but he could also explain it to the outside world. He could make medicine and find a few medical professors to come up with some classic treatment cases. Then, his reputation could be restored. As for those shareholders who were ready to make a move, he believed that they would not be so stupid as to give up so many benefits in order to praise a little girl. Li Wenbo was very busy. On the other side, Jing Yunzhao brought her father, Jing Tianyi, to look at houses. The location of the house she chose was very good. It was near the Su family. The district was full of detached villas. Every family had their own private property. The people who lived there were either rich or respectable. Li Xiaoyun had a house in the district. He had specially introduced this place. As the host, Li Xiaoyun naturally had to bring Jing Yunzhao and Jing Tianyi to look at the environment here first. Therefore, they met early. When Jing Tianyi saw Li Xiaoyun, he did not show any displeasure. It was as if he had known him for a long time. The location is not bad. Zhao, this is good. Jing Tianyi was very satisfied after he pushed Jing Tianyi around the place. Father, this place is indeed quite good, but isn't it a little too quiet? You don't even have anyone to talk to. She still hoped that her father would meet some of his old friends so that he wouldn't be bored. Li Xiaoyun poked her head. Am I not your neighbor? I'll drop by when I'm free. I'm used to being alone and quiet. It's not suitable for me to be in a place that's too crowded. Jing Tianyi added, by the way, tell me where your mother is buried later. I want to see her first. Jing Yunzhao suddenly stopped talking and nodded. Although Li Xiaoyun also had a house here, he had never lived there, so he did not enter the house. After walking around, Jing Yunzhao went to go through a series of procedures. However, after finishing the procedures and walking out of the manager's office, he bumped into a woman. Ruan Xiaoxia's gaze was soft as she stared straight at Jing Tianyi. Tianyi, you live here too. What a coincidence. I just bought a house. Ruan Xiaoxia said. Jing Yunzhao frowned slightly. Coincidence? Probably not, right? Jing Tianyi glanced at her and said softly, N. Then, he said to Jing Yunzhao, Zhao, let's go first. Tianyi. You don't want to see me that much. Chapter 1226. Ruan Xiaoxia's voice was filled with helplessness. 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks. Her face, which had not aged in the first place, looked even more pitiful and unlovable. This woman had never been married, had never given birth to a child, and even knew medicine. It was as if she had become a fairy. She was still as beautiful as ever. Even this light trembling voice seemed to have a kind of soul-stirring feeling. Even if Jing Yunzhao was a woman, she still had that moment of absent-mindedness. One couldn't help but admit that this kind of woman, if placed by the side of an ancient emperor, would be a disaster for the country and its people. Tian Yi, do you still remember him? Yen Peng. Back then, you and I met him together. We said that we would take care of him together, and I did. All these years, I raised him. He was very handsome and had a gentle personality, just like you. Unfortunately, he was wrongly accused of murder. Tian Yi, you should know that Yen Peng is a good child. He wouldn't do anything wrong. Ruan Xiaoxia said. This was the first time Jing Yunzhao heard her speak so much. Previously, when she was by Lin Feng's side, she was like an ornament, not moving at all. Jing Tiany's face had a hint of expression. He turned his head and faced her. So, what do you want me to do? Our family was supposed to be together, so I hope you can save him. Ruan Xiaoxia begged. The case was already being investigated. It was just going through the procedure. As long as the procedure was over, her son would be dead. Save him and let him continue to commit murder. I can't do that. Moreover, I'm a cripple. I can't do anything. Jing Tiany's broad face was a little gloomy. When Ruan Xiaoxia heard this, she quickly glanced at Jing Yunzhao and immediately said, "Don't say that. As long as you're willing to save him, he will definitely be released. Right now, the police won't let me see him. I know that this is your daughter's order." The Su family and her interfered. She is your daughter. Jing Tiany silently shook his head. After so many years, there was still someone who was stubborn and even fell deeper. Back then, the Li family did let her down and delayed her life. However, it was also her own fault. She didn't think about it. He was a living person. How could he listen to his family's arrangements? In the future, he would be reduced to a tool of the Li family. Even if he didn't have the guts to take on the responsibility of the Jing clan, he still had his principles and bottom line. When Ruan Xiaoxia heard this, she rushed over and squatted in front of Jing Tiany's wheelchair. She cried, "Tiany, don't you care about our past relationship at all? Even if they can't become husband and wife, they are still brother and sister. You have seen Yen Peng. You liked him so much back then. Are you going to watch him die now? You weren't like this in the past. We were from the same world. We couldn't bear to see others being wronged. We couldn't bear to see blood. Why have you changed?" She hadn't seen him for many years, but she still remembered his appearance. She remembered clearly what he liked and what he hated. Living alone for all these years, it was just like when she was by his side when they were young. It had never changed. She was waiting. She was waiting for this man to hate that woman, Su Xianlan. Then, he would follow his parents' words and be with her. Even if he was getting older, even if he was under house arrest by the Li family, even if his lower body was crippled, she still wanted to wait. Even if, it would be good to have a response, right? Chapter 12:27. Ruan Xiaoxia's tears kept falling from her eyes. It was heart-wrenching, except for Jing Yunzhao and Li Xiaoyun. The two of them had the same cold-blooded nature and would never be moved by these false obsessions. "Xiaoxia, Xianlan is gone. Do you think I can still be the same as before? You're not that old yet. Find a good man to marry and give birth to a child that truly belongs to you. That's the right thing to do. Don't be controlled by my parents anymore." Li Tiany shook his head and left without any reluctance. Behind him, Ruan Xiaoxia's eyes slowly changed from sadness to resentment and became more persistent. She had waited for 20 years, but he was still the same. What was wrong with her? In terms of appearance, she was much better than Su Xianlon. In terms of ability, she also knew medical skills and could talk to him. In terms of character, she had never done anything bloody. Everything about her developed according to what he liked. Why couldn't she compare to a person who had been missing for many years and might even be dead? Was it just because she was not a daughter of the Su family and her status was not good enough for him? It couldn't be. Li Wenba and Lin Feng both agreed with her back then. Therefore, it was still because of Su Xianlon's face. Although it was not extremely beautiful, it could still charm people. Just like Su Xianlon's daughter, Jing Yunzhao, wasn't she the same? She had a man, but she still had to provoke others and gain the so-called reputation to make everyone crazy and obsessed with her. Since he was heartless, then, it was not her fault. Her family was ruined and completely gone. Others could forget about living a perfect and happy life. Jing Yunzhao felt a trace of hostility, and this was the first time she felt hostility from Wan Xiaoxia. She hadn't seen Wan Xiaoxia many times in the first place. In the past, she was always very quiet, and her limelight was almost stolen by others. She was so quiet that she couldn't be seen as a threat. But now, Jing Yunzhao felt a chill run down her spine. This feeling was even stronger than what he felt from Wan Yanping. Father, you and Wan Xiaoxia have known each other since childhood. What's her personality like? Jing Yunzhao asked tentatively. Jing Tianyi shook his head and said, she's been timid since she was young. She used to cry a lot, but no matter where I went, she would follow me. I didn't expect her to become like this. It's all the Li family's fault. They've affected her too much, causing her to be unable to walk out of that role. Then, does she know martial arts? Jing Yunzhao suddenly asked another question. Jing Tianyi was stunned. Her? That shouldn't be the case, right? I've never seen her use it. Just because she's useless doesn't mean she doesn't know how to. Did she have time to learn martial arts when she was young? Is there anything suspicious? Jing Yunzhao asked again. If Wan Xiaoxia knew martial arts, then her martial arts would definitely be better than Wan Yanping's. She might even be stronger than her. She was good at hiding. For example, her ability to restrain her internal qi was absolutely perfect. Although she looked very weak, she did not know why, but she felt very nervous at that moment. She also clearly felt that Li Xiaoyun's gaze was a little strange. It seemed that he had also felt something. Your grandfather raised her as his future daughter-in-law, so he was very strict with her. He also let her learn a lot of things that only young ladies in ancient times would learn. So the two of us did not spend all the time together. In the past, she would wake up around 3 or 4 in the morning to learn the rules. If she wanted to learn martial arts, it's not impossible to take advantage of this time. Chapter 12:28. Jing Tianyi carefully recalled the past. However, although he said that Wan Xiaoxia had time to learn martial arts, he didn't really believe it. After all, he had spent a lot of time with Wan Xiaoxia in the past. They were relatives for more than 20 years, and they saw each other almost every day. However, he had never found anything suspicious about her. If she really knew martial arts, then her scheming. Jing Tianyi's eyes flashed with a trace of gloominess. He lightly rubbed the ordinary ring on his fingertip. Right now, he and Wan Xiaoxia went their separate ways. However, because of meeting this woman, Jing Yunzhao always felt a little uneasy in his heart. He was somewhat hesitant about this house. However, Jing Tianyi didn't take it to heart. He didn't want to live in Immortal Crane Hall, nor could he live in the Su family or the Li family. The matter of moving house was imminent. Soon, Jing Yunzhao packed up his things and tidied up the house. Other than that, Jing Yunzhao had also prepared a very strong security system. There were security guards outside the house, working in shifts 24 hours a day. Some of the security lines were also very complicated. As long as someone barged in, they would definitely trigger the alarm. At that time, they would be able to prepare in advance. It wasn't that she was overthinking, but the feeling that Wan Xiaoxia conveyed to her was too dangerous. Towards Jing Yunzhao's actions, Jing Tianyi didn't say much and was very cooperative. After so many years, Jing Tianyi had even gotten used to living under house arrest. Thus, even if he was alone at home, he didn't feel any discomfort. On the contrary, he didn't like being around people. At the same time, Shuri Jiao's gauze could be removed. Naturally, she didn't need to live in a mortal crane hole. However, Shuri Jiao looked less lively than before. Especially in front of Jing Yunzhao, her eyes were filled with fear, as if she had seen a terrifying monster. Even so, she still dawdled in a mortal crane hall for a long time before leaving. The annoying person disappeared in front of her eyes. Everything returned to normal. Many people were talking about celebrities and idols. In the past, Jing Yunzhao was not interested in other people in the entertainment industry, so he did not like to listen to them. However, now that Xiao Haiqing was popular, it was completely different. After the previous ruckus, Xiao Haiqing's fame had already skyrocketed. It had even suppressed the current female lead of the popular drama, Yi Wan. Many people had become a strand of love in her fan club. Even under the Yun Xiao account that Jing Yunzhao had previously applied for, there were many people following it. Every day, they looked forward to Jing Yunzhao posting some photos and the latest news about Xiao Haiqing. Jing, you're making me cry. Jing Yunzhao had just returned to the dormitory from outside when Yao Baobao shouted. She pointed at the image on the computer and said, "Look at how pitiful Axayan Han is. No one cares for her and no one loves her. She should have been doted on by the big boss." Jing Yunzhao was startled when he heard her crying at first, but after listening to her words, he couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Haiqing's Axayan Han was indeed a sad person. When the treacherous official was proud, her identity was the opposite of the treacherous official. When the treacherous official was unlucky, she became the ally of the treacherous official. She had always thought that she was the daughter of a loyal official, but her last life's belief was in vain. She was simply a shield and a paving stone for the female lead. However, this also showed that Xiao Haiqing's acting was really good. That kind of forbearance and sadness made people's hearts ache. How can little Zhao's acting be so good? She is obviously acting as a bad person, but no one in the comments thinks that she is hateful. She really has too many fans. Yao Baobao's eyes were full of hearts. She had become a small fan. Chapter 1229. Not to mention Yao Baobao, even Ren Xingyue, a woman who didn't like to chase after celebrities and didn't like to talk much, was staring at the screen in a daze. The admiration in her eyes was self-evident. "Yun Zhao, since you have such a good relationship with Xiao Xiao, how about letting her act in my novel in the future? I think she's very suitable." After a while, Ren Xingyue also said. Her novel had already been sold into a movie, so it was definitely going to be filmed. However, it was still in the process. However, when her novel could be filmed, Xiao Haiqing's popularity would be even better than it was now. With her talent, there was no need to talk about her status in the future. She might not be able to afford it. Although Xiao Haiqing was now a member of her company, she wouldn't simply accept work for her. The more famous Xiao Haiqing was, the more she needed to be nurtured. She couldn't act recklessly because of favors. "I'll contact her during the casting. If she's suitable, I'll definitely let her act," Jing Yunzhao only said tactfully. Although she didn't get Jing Yunzhao's guarantee, Ren Xingyue was more understanding and didn't feel unhappy. In fact, she was somewhat confident. After this drama ends, I'll have to wait for a long time before I can see Xiao Zhao's acting. However, she has been on a lot of variety shows recently. Those commercials are also very good. You don't have to worry about her low exposure. Yao Baobao said with a worried face. When it came to commercials, Jing Yunzhao rubbed her eyebrows. A few days ago, she had been busy with the Li family and her father's matters. She didn't care much about Hai Qing. In addition, there were other people who took care of the job, so she didn't need to use her. Therefore, she only saw the effect when the commercials were aired. She had to admit that she was really amazed by Hai Qing. That kind of micro-movie commercials also tested one's acting skills. She was really good at it. As soon as the commercials were aired, the sales of the tea house and Yuling wine increased by a few points. To her, Xiao Haiqing was family. Now that she heard Yao Baobao and Ren Xingyue praise her, it would be strange if she wasn't in a good mood. Thinking about how they had made an appointment today, her expression became much gentler. Hua Tianxian, who was standing beside her, was already used to her arrogance and could only remain silent. Jing Er, are you going back to the Su family tonight? Hua Tianxian asked. Jing Yunzhao nodded. Hua Tianxian paused for a few seconds and said, "There's something I don't know if I should tell you." "You know how to dawdle too?" Jing Yunzhao was a little surprised. Hua Tianxian's temper had always been very straightforward. She couldn't hide anything at all. Now, she actually looked like she was in a difficult position. "This has nothing to do with you, but I feel a little uncomfortable." Hua Tianxian pondered, then continued, "You know, I have quite a lot of fair-weather friends. In the past 2 days, someone I know bought some old photos of Xiao Haiqing. Of course, they weren't ugly photos, just normal family photos. But now that Xiao Haiqing is very popular, those photos can be sold at a good price. Also, I heard that other than those photos, they also sold some information, such as her likes and dislikes." What Tianxian then repeated herself. She said that the other party didn't sell the photos at a high price. The photos were only a few dozen yuan each, and the information was also a few dozen yuan each. They didn't make much money from Xiao Haiqing either. But the problem was that her friend had only bought these photos because the other party had exaggerated. In front of many people, he had said that he was very close to Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqing and knew their private affairs very well. Chapter 1230. If the matter was closely related to her, Jing Yunzhao wouldn't be so angry. However, the other party had implicated Xiao Haiqing. She couldn't stand it anymore. "Where did that person sell the information?" Jing Yunzhao asked. "The bar we went to before." "You lied to me and said the owner was ugly." Hua Tianxian smiled and said, "But I asked around. It wasn't the owner who sold the information. It was a male classmate. That male classmate was only with 2 or 3 friends. From the looks of it, he just wanted to earn some extra money. I suspect that he's an old friend of yours. These so-called information and photos couldn't be sold for long. After all, once others found out about it, they wouldn't be the only ones. Therefore, even if the other party did it, the other party would only be able to earn a few hundred yuan. It wouldn't be too much. However, this kind of behavior was indeed a little disgusting." "Goddess, thank you. I'll go take a look later." Jing Yunzhao looked at her and said sincerely. Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows and said proudly, "What's the use of just saying thank you? You owe me a favor. If I need anything in the future, you have to be at my beck and call." Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and didn't refute. Hua Tianxian was very smart. She wouldn't randomly order her around. If she really needed help, it would definitely be when she really needed help. After packing up, Jing Yunzhao personally drove to pick up Xiao Haiqing. The car that his second uncle gave him was too eye-catching. Jing Yunzhao changed to his first uncle's car, which was low-key and simple. When Xiao Haiqing wasn't filming, she would stay at school. Moreover, they had already arranged a time, so he picked her up according to the plan. However, when Xiao Haiqing got into the car, Jing Yunzhao could clearly see that her expression was a little off. She didn't look too happy. I heard that the paparazzi in the entertainment industry are very good. If you're photographed like this, people might say that you're throwing a tantrum at your classmates in school, Jing Yunzhao said with a smile. Xiao Haiqing breathed a sigh of relief. I want to throw a tantrum at them, but I can't. A lot of people are popular. What's the problem? Jing Yunzhao held the steering wheel and paid attention to his surroundings. He didn't notice anyone following them. It's not really troublesome. It's just that I'm very popular at the moment, so my roommates all asked me to introduce you to them. It doesn't matter, but the problem is that someone asked me sourly if you had a powerful godfather in the past, so you could open your own company. That's fucking bullshit. Xiao Haiqing was full of anger at the mention of those people. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but laugh. She didn't care what others said behind her back, as long as she didn't hear it. Gossiping behind someone's back was called gossiping, but if it was done in front of them, it was called provocation. Don't be angry. There are many people like that who say the grapes are sour because they can't eat them. As the car sped away, Jing Yunzhao's words drifted out. Xiao Haiqing sighed and leaned against the seat. Her whole body relaxed a lot. By the way, where are you taking me? Xiao Haiqing looked out the window and muttered again. Jing Yunzhao wasn't in a hurry to explain. After all, he wasn't sure if he could see the previous person. He drove all the way to the bar according to his memory. However, when the car passed by the nearby pedestrian street, he only saw that there seemed to be a lot of people outside the mall. Jing Yunzhao's hearing was good. He listened carefully, but when he heard this, his face darkened and he directly found a place to park the car. Chapter 1231. This street was near the bar, and Qiao Zizhou's school shouldn't be too far away. At this time, Jing Yunzhao could only hear people saying Xiao Haiqing. Although the words weren't excessive, she instantly understood what was going on. Xiao Haiqing and Jing Yunzhao were both wearing baseball caps, and Xiao Haiqing was even wearing a mask. Walking outside, they couldn't see anything special. Jing Yunzhao pulled her into the crowd and saw the people in the open space. They saw Qiao Zizhou and two boys handing out flyers. There was a stereo on the ground, and melodious songs were playing. The two of them picked up a flyer and looked at it, only to find it funny. On the top was an old photo of her and Xiao Haiqing, and next to it was a photo of Qiao Zizhou when he was in school. The background of the photo was exactly the same. It was a high school building, and they were all wearing the same school uniform. Qiao Zizhou used this to prove that he and Jing Yunzhao were schoolmates, uncles, aunts, brothers and sisters. We are not scammers. We are people that Xiao Xiao knows. Because our family background isn't very good, but we want to do good, so we want to take this opportunity to raise money. We will donate all the money you donate. Everyone knows that Chief Jing likes to do good deeds, right? Our small team learned from her. She is our idol, so we must do something to respond to her and do something for society. Qiao Zizhou's face was full of smiles, and his words were appropriate. His clothes were clean, his smile was shy, and his eyes looked very honest. In addition, he wasn't very old, so no one would suspect that they would be thick-skinned enough to mess around. At this time, Xiao Haiqing was about to be ignited. This bastard, he dares to use my reputation to raise money. Even if he wanted to raise money, he should have gotten the consent of both parties, right? What's more, Jing Yunzhao and Qiao Zizhou were very clear about Qiao Zizhou's character. Don't worry, just look at their glowing faces. It's their first time here. Jing Yunzhao suddenly smiled. Do you think people can casually pick up money in these places? Let's take a look first. The two of them were now considered celebrities. If they appeared rashly, it would only cause chaos. When the time came, they could not do anything to each other. Otherwise, they would quickly be photographed and posted online. But from the looks of it, the one selling information in the bar was probably Qiao Zizhou. Previously, Qiao Zizhou was Shi Jiao's boyfriend, but after Shi Jiao's accident, he didn't come to visit her at all. Even when Jing Yunzhao sent people to follow Shi Jiao, they didn't discover his existence. It seemed that after Shi Jiao failed to threaten her, she dumped this useless Qiao Zizhou. In his previous life, Qiao Zizhou was a very extravagant boy. Everything he ate, wore, and used was of the best quality. Especially after he came to the capital, where he saw too many rich people, his vanity swelled. Back then, he kept asking Qiao Weimin for money. However, at that time, the Qiao family had a good foundation and could afford his extravagance. But now it was different. Qiao Weimin couldn't even support himself, so how could he support him? In addition, he wasn't the kind of person who could work part-time. If he didn't rely on women to earn money, he could only rely on petty tricks like this. Xiao Haiqing's name was very famous, and they did indeed look like a university student's activity. There were many middle-aged men, women, and elderly people who empathized with them and gave them money. Some gave a few dollars, while others gave a few $100s. There were many people on this street, so in a short while, there were estimated to be thousands of dollars in the account. Jing Yunzhao sneered and watched from the crowd. Chapter 1232. Qiao Zizhou and the other two watched as these people kept sending money to their door. Their hearts were blooming with joy, and their smiles were even more brilliant. Their thanks were crisp and powerful, and extremely sincere. If they had known earlier that this was a way to make money, they would have come earlier. The people outside were stupid and rich, much better than the people in the bar. However, the reason why they went to the bar before was completely a coincidence. At that time, they didn't have enough money on them. They thought that there was a place nearby that printed photos, so they casually printed out the things that they had saved in their phones. They didn't expect that someone would really buy it, but the bar's expenses were high, and it wasn't easy to do the same thing again, so they had to plan again. Speaking of which, it was all Jing Yunzhao and Shi Jiao's fault. Jing Yunzhao didn't give him money, didn't provide for his education, and that Shi Jiao treated him as a plaything. She threw him away just like that, and even took back the things that she gave him. She was extremely stingy. At this time, Jing Yunzhao and Qiao Zizhou sat down in a dessert shop nearby and quietly looked outside. Qiao Zizhou and the other two were busy for 2 or 3 hours, and then they were ready to pack up and leave. It seemed that they were preparing to have a big meal, and Jing Yunzhao immediately followed. Today's harvest is quite good. Brother, this time it's all thanks to you. Anyway, we don't want much money, just pay us according to the original agreement, but you have to treat us to a good meal. One of them didn't forget to say. Okay, just order anything under 500. Qiao Zizhou said directly. When the other two heard this, they were also happy and weren't greedy. This photo was provided by Qiao Zizhou, and he was also the one who came up with the idea, so it was only right for him to take the lion's share. Even though it wasn't a long time ago, Chief Jing and Xiao Haiqing had a lot of fans, so they must know the two of them. They paid without saying a word, and there were even idiots who asked them for autographs. But when it came to autographs, Zizhou, I think that since you know Chief Jing and Xiao Xiao, why don't you think of a way to get their autographs to sell, especially that Chief Jing. Although she's not from the entertainment industry, she's more famous than those A-list big shots. More importantly, she's mysterious. If you have her autograph, you'll definitely be able to sell it well. Another person said. When Qiao Zizhou heard this, he pondered for a moment and shook his head. How could it be that easy? That woman, Jing Yunzhao, was simply a rock. If he could really get her autograph, then he might as well have asked for money earlier. When the other two saw him like this, they also knew where these photos came from. Previously, when he said that he knew those two people, he was probably just bragging. While Qiao Zizhou was walking with the donation box in his arms, a few men suddenly appeared behind him. They were extremely fast as they walked in front of the three of them and directly grabbed their shoulders. Little brother, long time no see. Let's go to my car and have a good chat. Before Qiao Zizhou and the other two could react, they were dragged into a van by the roadside. Xiao Haiqing was shocked. She looked at Jing Yunzhao in shock. These are the dark forces here. Xiao Haiqing was confused. The other party was very strong, and they cooperated very well. At this time, the van had already driven away. It was obvious that they were used to doing this kind of thing. It's very normal. There are many people coming and going in this place. Usually, there are a lot of people begging. Even if there weren't these forces, those beggars wouldn't let the three of them go. Jing Yunzhao smiled. I heard my uncle mention this before. The police have also suppressed these people, but it's still impossible to be completely clean. This is the first time Qiao Zizhou and the others are here, so it's reasonable to say that it's fine. But it's a pity that he's earned too much. It would be strange if people weren't jealous. Chapter 1233. After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, he sped up and chased after the car. The other party's car did not go too far. Soon, the three of them were thrown out of the car. Other than that, there was only an empty suitcase left beside the three of them. They did not even have any accessories on their bodies. Their pockets were flipped open, and their phones and wallets were probably gone. Not only that, their faces were covered in bruises. Jing Yunzhao felt that the beating was too light. A thick-skinned person like Qiao Zizhou was really capable of doing anything. He even used someone else's name to cheat others. He was really bold. He looked at the car that was leaving and thought of Dreamy, who had not shown up yet. First uncle and second uncle had always been investigating this person. They also knew that he was a powerful figure. These few streets were quite close to his businesses. It was likely that the group of people just now who dared to rob and beat people up must have relied on his power. However, Dreamy might not care about such a small business. Jing Yunzhao looked at Qiao Zizhou, who was beaten up. Before too many people were attracted, he threw a small stone from the car window and aimed it at the back of Qiao Zizhou's head. In an instant, Qiao Zizhou fell down again. Yunzhao. Xiao Haiqing was stunned. We can't let this person live. If there's a first time, there will be a second time. I know him better than you. Since he was able to sell information to Shuri Jiao, he will be able to do other things in the future. This time, we can make use of his injury to give eldest uncle and the others an excuse to investigate the power here. Jing Yunzhao explained. The blow just now was not fatal, but it would be serious. As long as the matter was blown out of proportion, the two students beside him would definitely tell the truth. It could be considered as slandering Dreamy. Even if they could not do anything to him, they could at least disgust him. When Xiao Haiqing heard this, she immediately understood. Immediately, he drove away. Jing Yunzhao acted as if he didn't know about the situation of Qiao Zizhou and the other two. However, just as she had expected, Xiao Zizhou was immediately sent to the hospital. When the police intervened, the two students directly told the truth. Although it was wrong for Xiao Zizhou to use other people's names to cheat money, in the eyes of the police, it was a matter of life and death, so they had to pay more attention to it. Furthermore, Jing Yunzhao had specially given Jean Iran a chance to thoroughly investigate the matter. So, of course, they were more forceful. Not only did they discuss Jean Iran, but they also harmed his interests. However, Su Yuantek didn't allow Jing Yunzhao to meddle in Jean Iran's affairs. That night, the two of them returned to the Su family as usual to have dinner and chat. However, compared to before, Li Xiaoyun and Shen Hong were also present. It was much livelier than before. Even though Shen Hong had a feeling of being on guard against Li Xiaoyun, he didn't have that many relatives, so it wasn't good for him to get involved. He could only maintain his distance, but he would occasionally look at Jing Yunzhao, afraid that Li Xiaoyun would do something to bully her. If Li Xiaoyun didn't know that Shen Hong was Jing Yunzhao's cousin, he would probably think that he had an additional love rival. "You're actually injured. What kind of shady business did you do outside?" Su Wancheng said sarcastically as Jing Yunzhao checked Li Xiaoyun's wound. He didn't mean any harm, but his mouth was unforgiving. In contrast, Shen Hong was slightly more polite. With a look of inquiry, he said, "This is a gunshot wound, right?" Looking at the size of the wound, it should be caused by a very powerful gun. Li Xiaoyun glanced at Jing Yunzhao and deliberately raised his eyebrows innocently. "Second uncle, cousin." Jing Yunzhao reminded them, "If you continue to be sarcastic, I won't cook for you tonight." Chapter 1234. In fact, Su Wanqing knew about Li Xiaoyun's work. After all, the Li family had a general like old Master Li. Li Xiaoyun couldn't be too shabby as a soldier. However, he had nothing better to do. Especially when he caught a glimpse of the tacit understanding between his niece and Li Xiaoyun, he felt uncomfortable. It was as if a cat was clawing at him and he couldn't wait to throw Li Xiaoyun out. Of course, that was just a thought. Not to mention that Li Xiaoyun had already defeated Jing Yunzhao, he had nothing to say. Even if he could fight, he couldn't beat him. "Okay. I won't say." Su Wanqing immediately changed his words, but then he asked, "Have your parents and family seen Xiao Zhao?" "I've already taken her to see Grandpa," Li Xiaoyun said directly. When Su Wanqing heard this, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Although he was jealous of Li Xiaoyun, he had to admit that Li Xiaoyun's background was envied by many. That generally was definitely a heroic hero and the idol of countless men. Unfortunately, in this peaceful era, the old man basically didn't come out of retirement, so there weren't many outsiders who could see him. I was fortunate enough to see old Master Li once. He looked like a treasure, but I don't know what he thinks of Zhao, Su Yuantek said curiously. At the mention of Li Junwei, everyone in the room pricked up their ears. Even Su Jingji, the always arrogant old man, had some admiration on his face. Of course, although Su Jingji respected General Li, he didn't worship him blindly. After all, the two were of the same generation. Moreover, his Su family wasn't bad either. Although they didn't fight on the battlefield during the war, they contributed medicinal herbs that saved countless people. Therefore, he didn't have to belittle himself. "My grandfather gave her his family heirloom. Of course, he's very supportive of our relationship, but my parents. Zhao is still young after all. I still want to wait." Li Xiaoyun frowned slightly. If Jing Yunzhao was willing, of course, he was willing to let her become his woman immediately. However, the matter of meeting his parents should be delayed as much as possible. As long as his grandfather agreed, it was enough. As for his parents, if they found out now, they would have to fight with them in advance. Su Yuantek and Su Wanqing knew some things about the Li family, so they agreed with Li Xiaoyun. By the way, Grandpa, I want to ask you for a favor. After a while, Jing Yunzhao suddenly spoke. When Elder Su heard this, he was quite surprised. After all, this girl was now omnipotent and could solve many things by herself. She didn't need his help at all. Therefore, it was quite rare for her to use the word beg. Tell me, what's the matter? The old man chuckled. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Xiao Haiqing and said, My relationship with Haiqing is no different from that of a biological sister. That's why I want you to take her as your god-granddaughter. In the future, she and I will be real cousins. Hearing this, everyone in the room was stunned. Su Yuantek was also a little surprised. Although it was just a god-granddaughter, in reality, it was very complicated. For a family like the Su family, even if it was a god-granddaughter, the requirements would not be low. First of all, the other party must have a clean family background and must have a good character. In addition, the god-granddaughter of the old man would also be Su Yuantek's goddaughter. The old man had no objections to Xiao Haiqing. In fact, he quite liked her. After all, it was his nature to like children with strong personalities. He didn't like cowardly and naive children. As long as it wasn't someone like Su Yu, it would be fine. Chapter 1235. Grandpa Su immediately nodded, indicating that there was no problem. Then, Jing Yunzhao looked at his uncle, Su Yuantek. Jing Yunzhao had mentioned this matter to Xiao Haiqing before, but Xiao Haiqing didn't have any objections. After all, the Su family treated her very well. However, the Su family was also a wealthy family, and she didn't want to rashly associate herself with them. But after thinking about it carefully, she was confident that she would be able to make a name for herself in the future. When that time came, she wouldn't disgrace the Su family's name. This is a good thing. I also like Haiqing. Su Yuantek nodded. He only had one son, Shenhong, but they didn't know each other. Until now, he still didn't have the courage to acknowledge him. If he had a daughter first, it would be a joyous occasion. When Jing Yunzhao heard this, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. If that's the case, then, I don't agree. Jing Yunzhao was halfway through his sentence when Su Wanqing suddenly interrupted. Second uncle. Jing Yunzhao was a little confused. Su Wanqing coughed dryly and shifted his body. I think, it's not very appropriate. Xiao Zhao, there are still some unresolved matters in our family. If we acknowledge them as godparents, it's too hasty. The matters he was referring to were the deaths of Shentong and her son, as well as Jing Yunzhao's mother. However, from Jing Yunzhao's point of view, these two matters didn't have much to do with acknowledging them as godparents. Moreover, his uncle had been visiting Shentong a lot recently, and the two were already very familiar with each other. Shenhong and the Su family were also getting closer, so it was only a matter of time before they would acknowledge each other as godparents. As for the latter, there were some things that weren't said, but it didn't mean that they didn't know. His uncle had been busy with work recently, so he had to keep it a secret for the time being. However, after this period, he would definitely tell the truth. Xiao Haiqing was already a little nervous. If it were someone else, she might not feel this way. However, it was different because it was the Su family. Although she had a father, she was no different from an orphan. During her time in the capital, the Su family had given her a different kind of warmth, so she really wanted to be a part of this family. Of course, the most important reason was that Jing Yunzhao was the only family in her heart. Naturally, she wanted to be closer to her. However, at this moment, only disappointment and awkwardness was left in her heart when she heard what Su Wanqing said. Jing Yunzhao was the same. She had previously asked her grandfather and uncle for their opinion on Xiao Haiqing, and only brought it up after receiving their approval. She never thought that her second uncle would actually disagree. What does it have anything to do with you? Little girl Xiao, you don't have to worry about him, her grandfather said immediately. Your second uncle is always like this at home. You don't have to worry about him. Ask him for a greeting gift later. If he doesn't give it to you, you and Xiao can ignore him in the future, Su Yuantek said directly as he glared at Su Wenqing. He really did feel that Xiao Haiqing was a good girl, especially before Jing Yunzhao recognized her as a relative. Their relationship had almost reached the point where they could only rely on each other for survival, and this girl's father was also an unreliable person. Now that she had a proper elder to take care of her, it was a good thing. I said no, and that means no. Su Wenqing's expression suddenly became very serious. She usually comes to the Su family as a guest. I welcome her, and I will definitely take good care of her. However, I can't agree to recognize her as a foster family. Su Wenqing's eyes didn't seem to be joking. Jing Yunzhao's originally pleasant face suddenly darkened. Second uncle, what's the reason? Jing Yunzhao looked at him and asked. Chapter 1236. They were family, and there was nothing that couldn't be said out loud. Moreover, Jing Yunzhao couldn't think of any reason for his second uncle to reject this matter. Xiao Haiqing didn't say anything, and Jing Yunzhao took the initiative to shake her hand. Yunzhao, since second uncle Su isn't willing, then let's forget about this matter. This situation is good, Xiao Haiqing said hurriedly as she felt that Jing Yunzhao was about to lose his temper. This second uncle Su. Even if he wasn't willing, he could have talked to her in private and let her explain to Jing Yunzhao. But now. He knew Yunzhao's temper. Su Wenqing panicked, but he quickly regained his serious look. He even directly said, Zhao, Miss Xiao is a good friend of yours. She is good in all aspects, and I admit that. But now that Su Yu is removed from the Su family, if she recognizes him as her god relative, she will be the first member of the Su family. It doesn't have a good meaning. After all, how can you recognize a god relative before you even acknowledge your own child? Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips, but he didn't agree with this at all. Second uncle's excuse was too forced. Also, if she wants to recognize him as her god relative, shouldn't we inform her father? If her father knows about this, can you guarantee that she won't come knocking on his door? Su Wenqing looked at Xiao Haiqing and made up his mind. He said, you know what kind of person her father is. This family's culture is not right. Moreover, she is an actress. How can the actors of today be the same as the actors of a few decades ago? Do you think everyone in the entertainment industry is like your Aunt Tong? She just entered the entertainment industry not long ago, and she is still pure and clean. But we don't know if she can withstand the test in the future. I don't want another Su Yu in our family. After he finished speaking, Jing Yunzhao was so angry that his face turned green. Su Yuantek's face twitched. He didn't know what had gotten into him. Last night, when he went to his brother's place to talk to him about something, he found him staring at the TV. It was the recently popular Eunuch's Palace, which was played by the little girl in front of him. At that time, he even praised her. How could his temperament change in just one day? Beside him, the old man glanced at him and said angrily, I think you're even worse than Su Yu. After that, he left with Su Xingyuan's help. This old man was very shrewd. He could tell that Jing Yunzhao was angry. If he didn't leave now, when would he? Su Yuantek saw that the old man had run away. How could he be stupid enough to take him with him? He stood up and said, you have to figure out your own way. After that, he took Shen Hong to the building next door and didn't stay on the battlefield any longer. At this time, the room was gloomy. Su Wenqing was about to be killed by his niece's gaze 1,000,000 times. He secretly glanced at Li Xiaoyun, hoping that he would help. Who knew that Li Xiaoyun's face turned away and he directly gave up the opportunity to please his second uncle? What a joke. No matter who was right or wrong, he would definitely help his wife. Second uncle, did you mean what you said just now? Jing Yunzhao suppressed his anger. He couldn't wait to beat this uncle up. Su Wenqing really couldn't stand Jing Yunzhao's cold knife. After a while, he was defeated. Anyway, I have my reasons. Let's not talk about this matter anymore. Originally, he didn't want to say such harsh words. But after thinking carefully, if he didn't do it decisively enough, it wouldn't be long before this matter was put on the agenda. At that time, it would be too late for him to object. Instead of that, it was better to get it done once and for all. Yunzhao, I'm the one who's trying to climb up the social ladder. You don't have to ask anything else. People like me should avoid coming here as much as possible in the future. Let's meet outside in the future. Xiao Haiqing glanced at Su Wenqing, said a few words, and directly took her bag and left. Chapter 1237. Xiao Haiqing had always been hot-tempered, so rejecting her as a goddaughter wasn't a big blow to her. However, when Su Wenqing said that her family's culture wasn't good and that she might not be clean in the future, no matter how good her temper was, she couldn't hold it in. Haiqing. Jing Yunzhao hurriedly chased after her, but he had only taken one step when Su Wenqing pulled him back. I'll send her off. Second uncle. Jing Yunzhao was speechless. He didn't know what to say. Don't worry, I promise I won't say anything bad this time, Su Wenqing hurriedly promised. Xiao Haiqing was still an extremely proud girl. Just now, in front of so many people, he had already said those words. Even if he coaxed her later, he didn't have to worry about her acknowledging him as her goddaughter. Jing Yunzhao couldn't keep up with Su Wenqing's pace at all. He didn't even understand what the hell he was doing. He looked apologetic and anxious, but if that was the case, why did he say those nasty words just now? While they were talking, Su Wenqing had already taken his car keys and followed them out. Jing Yunzhao looked at his baffled back and exchanged glances with Li Xiaoyun. They didn't understand the situation. The Su family's location was very remote, and the area was very large. It was almost impossible for a taxi to pass by the road in front of the door. Therefore, Xiao Haiqing regretted it as soon as she stepped out. She should have dragged Jing Yunzhao out with her. At least there would have been someone to send her off. However, when she thought of Su Wenqing's overbearing face just now, she felt stifled in her heart. It seemed that she had to buy a scooter first. She sighed and took out her phone to call someone to pick her up. However, before she could get through, a car stopped beside her. Su Wenqing opened the car door and stuffed her in without saying a word. Mr. Su, what is the meaning of this? Xiao Haiqing's address became unfamiliar. Su Wenqing turned the steering wheel and drove directly for a while. He stopped halfway up the mountain where there were no cars or people. The scenery here was extremely beautiful. The road was like a green dragon coiling around the mountainside. There was a guardrail on the side. It was a good place to watch the sunrise and sunset. You're angry just because of this. Su Wenqing's expression was a little strange as he said stiffly. Xiao Haiqing could no longer use the word angry to describe her feelings. She was in a daze. She felt that second Uncle Su was possessed by evil spirits. What do you mean? If you want me to stay away from the Su family, I'll do it. But if you want me to stay away from Yunzhao, I'm afraid I can't. Xiao Haiqing had a bad premonition in her heart. She thought for a while and said directly. In her opinion, Su Wenqing was not such a person before, but he had just said those words in front of so many people, which proved that her previous judgment of him was completely wrong. Who asked you to stay away from the Su family and Xiao Zhao? Su Wenqing said directly and said, it's just that I don't want to acknowledge you as my godfather. Is this very important to you? It's not that important, but it doesn't mean that you can doubt my character because of this. Xiao Haiqing also lost her temper and said, that's right. My father is a despicable person and a person who only cares about profits. He would definitely do something like asking for money. But he is him, and I am me. Since I can't let him die, I can only endure some things. Also, it's true that I'm an actress and not pure, but it doesn't mean that I will do things that go against my principles. Mr. Su, are you worried that I will use the name of the Su family to do something bad? Then I can tell you clearly that it's absolutely impossible in the future. I will follow your instructions and not acknowledge you as my godfather. After all, I don't want to call a self-righteous man my second uncle every day. Chapter 1238. Xiao Haiqing blurted out everything in one go. She recalled the situation at the Su family just now, and her nose felt a little sour. She had heard all kinds of unpleasant words. Previously, when she was rumored to have killed and raped people, there were even countless people who wanted her to die. They felt that her life was a waste of air. However, those people didn't matter, so although she was unhappy, she wasn't that angry or sad. After all, if she was sad for so many strangers in her life, then she probably wouldn't have extra time to do anything else in her life. However, the Su family was indeed different. What she looked forward to the most every day was to eat a home-cooked meal in the name of Jing Yunzhao. Although the Su family lacked a female head of the house, it was still a unique and warm family. However, she didn't expect to be rejected by Su Wenqing. She thought that after being together for so long, even if she wasn't a family member, she wouldn't be a cold outsider. However, in fact, in Su Wenqing's eyes, she wasn't even an outsider. She was a person worthy of suspicion. Su Wenqing had a headache. Aren't you usually very good at taking blows? I just said those things, and you can't take it anymore. It seems that Mr. Su hasn't said enough. Xiao Haiqing was getting angrier, and tears flashed in her eyes. If that's the case, then continue. I've eaten so much of your family's food, and I'll repay this favor. Su Wenqing frowned. Who told you to repay the favor? I was wrong to say those things to you. If you want to hit or scold me, I won't fight back. Seeing that her eyes were starting to tear up, it seemed that she was really angry. However, he didn't think that she was so fragile before. Su Wenqing muttered in his heart. Suddenly, he remembered the plot he saw yesterday. He smacked his lips and suddenly said, don't you think you're stupid? Why didn't you find someone more reliable to kill the female lead? What did you say? Xiao Haiqing was stunned for a moment, then remembered that he was talking about the plot of the TV show. Suddenly, the muscles on her chin trembled, and she suddenly had the urge to throw him down the mountain road. Mr. Su, thank you for following my drama, but if there's nothing else, please send me back. Xiao Haiqing couldn't bear it anymore. It was in the middle of nowhere. What if I don't? Su Wenqing suddenly laughed. Xiao Haiqing's eyelids twitched violently. She immediately took out her phone, but before she could start scrolling through her contacts, Su Wenqing stretched out his hand and threw it out. Xiao Haiqing was dumbfounded. His hands were still in the same position as before. He turned to look at Su Wenqing. What are you trying to do? Su Wenqing licked his lips and looked at the phone in the grass below. He also felt that he was impulsive, but it was a rare opportunity. It was a pity to let her go. "Talk to me," Su Wenqing said in a muffled voice. Xiao Haiqing was about to go crazy. "Can't you talk if you want to? Why did you throw my phone? I'll send you back." "You don't have to find someone else," Su Wenqing added. At this time, the sky was already dark. It was getting darker and darker, and even the setting sun was gone. Xiao Haiqing was wearing thin clothes, and the place was cold. Su Wenqing took off his coat and put it on her. Xiao Haiqing had a strange feeling at this time. Jing Yunzhao's second uncle must have been provoked, because even though he would occasionally be sloppy at home, he was usually very calm and collected. He could be considered mature and steady, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to run such a big company. But now, he had gone crazy and even became a pervert. Chapter 1239. Without her phone, the mountain road was full of twists and turns. Looking down from above, there was not a single car in sight. Even if there was, she wouldn't dare to sit in it. But if she had to walk back alone, she probably wouldn't be able to find her home even if she walked until dawn. "Talk. What do you want to talk about?" Xiao Haiqing gritted her teeth. She couldn't help but think of a scene. In this wilderness, if someone were to fall to their death on the road, there would probably be no evidence that she did it. Of course, it was just a thought. "How do you think the Su family treats you?" Su Wenqing asked in all seriousness. "Well, except for you, Mr. Su, everyone is good." Xiao Haiqing didn't shy away from the topic. Su Wenqing raised his eyebrows. "Am I bad to you? Other than today, I don't think I've done anything to make you unhappy, right?" When he first saw her, he only thought that this girl was not bad. At least, with his picky personality, there were many things about her that he approved of and did not dislike. Then, on Xiao Zhao's birthday, when she glanced back, he was stunned. He could not help but think about it. He always felt that the so-called beauty should be like her. "You didn't do anything in the past, but today, you've done enough. You hurt my pride, and now you've thrown my things away." Xiao Haiqing paused, took a deep breath, and said, "Do you know how much information and connections I saved on my phone? Now it's all gone. I still have a night scene to shoot later in the night. What if the director can't find me?" Su Wenqing choked. He was just impulsive and didn't think too much. Plus, he rarely acted impulsively in so many years, so he was quite surprised. He thought for a moment and said, "Sorry, I'll go get it for you." His serious expression made Xiao Haiqing feel flattered. "That's not necessary. Just send me back on time." If it were any other time, Su Wenqing would not refute. However, at this moment, Xiao Haiqing was standing beside him. He could not shirk his responsibility. Therefore, he rolled up his sleeves and climbed over the railing. The position of the phone was visible, but it was still a little difficult to get it. Xiao Haiqing was shocked when she saw it. It was dark now, and the situation was not good. This place was very steep. If something happened, there would be no way to ask for help. "Second Uncle Su. Come back. I don't want my phone anymore. Let's just forget about this matter." As soon as she said that, Su Wenqing immediately made a cut on a plant on his hand. Immediately, there was a bloody cut. Xiao Haiqing's mouth twitched. She was sure that Su Wenqing used to be a rich second young master and had never done such dangerous things. Xiao Haiqing did not dare to say anything. After all, he had already gone down. It was useless to say anything. Fortunately, the phone was not far away. She could only pray that he would come back soon. Su Wenqing had lived for 30 years. He was definitely calmer and more selfish than anyone else. Other than his family, he treated himself the best. He had never done anything that put himself in danger. At this age, other than the time when he fell from a building and broke his arm, he had not suffered any other serious injuries. He slowly moved down and reached out to grab the sturdy rocks and trees beside him. He was getting closer and closer to his target. However, the moment he touched the phone, the rock under his feet loosened. Instantly, he saw the phone slide down from its original position. It fell to the ground in front of his eyes. Even though he was far away and could not hear the sound, he was sure that the phone was smashed into pieces. Chapter 1240. Su Yuanqing's eyelids twitched fiercely when he saw that the thing he was about to get was gone. He felt a little ashamed, but things had already come to this point. As a man, he couldn't dilly-dally, so he quickly climbed up. Xiao Haiqing's mouth twitched. She wanted to laugh, but she didn't dare to. Logically speaking, she should be angry when her phone was smashed. However, second Uncle Su's behavior surprised her. He was obviously so embarrassed that he was about to explode, but he was holding it in. He wanted to save his face so badly that he could suffer. The phone, it's fine if it's dropped. I'll get you a new one. As for the things inside, when we reach the bottom, you can pick it up. I'll get a professional to copy it for you, Su Yuanqing said with a frown. Okay, Xiao Haiqing didn't want to provoke a man's self-esteem, so she agreed readily. Let's go. I'll send you back. Su Yuanqing coughed and was about to open the car door. Xiao Haiqing followed behind him. Her eyes were flickering, revealing her emotions. However, when the two of them reached the car, Su Yuanqing realized that the car keys were gone. His face instantly turned black. He turned around and looked at the cliff by the roadside. He was speechless. The car keys were lying quietly in the bushes. It was quite a distance away, and the position was even steeper than where the phone was. It was neither up nor down, and that was the most infuriating thing. Xiao Haiqing was really helpless. She still had a scene to shoot tonight. It was fine if she couldn't go back in the middle of the night, but the problem was that her phone was broken. If others couldn't find her, they might think that something was wrong with her safety. Second Uncle Su, can I borrow your phone? Xiao Haiqing said. Su Yuanqing's head was about to explode. He didn't know what day it was today, but he seemed to be a little unlucky. I left it in the car, Su Yuanqing replied. After he said that, Xiao Haiqing's face stiffened. Then, what should we do now? It was a little cold at night, and there was no one on the road. They couldn't use the car, and they didn't have a phone. It was impossible for them to walk back. If they really waited, they would definitely fall sick the next day. Su Yuanqing also encountered a problem. If he was alone, it wouldn't matter. After all, he was a man, and his body was definitely stronger than Xiao Haiqing's. But now, he had to think about her. We may have to wait. If there are people passing by, we may be able to contact the outside. Su Yuanqing braced himself and said. He might be able to break the car window, but his car had extremely high safety features. The car window wouldn't be broken so easily. Xiao Haiqing didn't say anything. She didn't mean to blame him. After all, the person in front of her was Jing Yunzhao's second uncle. No matter what, she should respect him. The more she said, the more awkward it would be. Su Yuanqing brought Xiao Haiqing to this road on a whim. Now, he had tasted the consequences, and lost all his face. Today's matter, second uncle, don't worry. I won't complain to Yun Zhao, Xiao Haiqing said quickly. I didn't mean that, Su Wanqing frowned and said, "I was reckless. I should apologize." "It's okay." Xiao Haiqing was also very direct. "Don't worry. Although there aren't many people on this road, there should be some trucks passing by at night. If you're lucky, they should be able to send you back in time," Su Wanqing said again. At this time, there were still 5 or 6 hours before Xiao Haiqing had to go to work. Xiao Haiqing didn't think that she was too miserable. After all, she hadn't met a good person for so long. Chapter 1241. While Su Wanqing and Xiao Haiqing were outside, unaware of the situation, Jing Yunzhao was also a little worried at home. After waiting for 2 or 3 hours, she still didn't see Su Wanqing come back. She felt even more anxious. Not only that, but she couldn't get through to their numbers, which made her feel uneasy. At this time, Li Xiaoyun was still sitting on the sofa and enjoying the fruit. He looked at her with an anxious attitude. Did something happen to the two of them? Jing Yunzhao said in a muffled voice. No, even if you don't believe Xiao Haiqing, you should believe Su Wanqing. He is your second uncle and the second young master of the Su family. What could happen? Li Xiaoyun said directly. Although Su Wanqing looked unreliable at home, he was actually very scheming. Although the Su family didn't have any military talents, it was still a big family with many years of heritage. Old Master Su seemed to not care about family matters, but looking at Su Yuantek, it was clear that he had another way of educating his children. That Su Wanqing was actually a very scheming man. His appearance and temperament were just a cover. But I can't get in touch with them now, Jing Yunzhao said with a frown. Try again in a few hours. If you still can't get in touch with them after midnight, then send someone to look for them, Li Xiaoyun said. Li Xiaoyun's voice had a soothing effect, causing Jing Yunzhao to sigh. She also felt that she might be too nervous. There was no lack of danger around her, so once her friends and family were out of her sight, she would have a sudden sense of crisis and couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Ah Zhao, you might not know your second uncle very well. Li Xiaoyun looked at her and felt a little distressed. He continued, you should know that after your second uncle was born, your grandmother passed away. He was raised by your eldest uncle and mother. He has been very smart since he was a child and has never been at a disadvantage. In the years he has been in the business world, countless people have tried to harm him, but none of them succeeded. Although he is not proficient in medicine and doesn't understand pharmacology, he has a strong point, which is that he is careful and doesn't make common mistakes. Even when he is impulsive, he will retain a trace of consciousness. This time, the sudden loss of contact is most likely intentional, Li Xiaoyun said. There were some things that he couldn't say out loud. After all, that was Ah Zhao's family. She was a person who thought too much of her enemies and thought too little of her family because she was too sentimental. Of course, it didn't mean that Su Wanqing wasn't sentimental. But on the contrary, because he cared about his niece. That, he deliberately restrained himself in front of her, of course. You did it on purpose. Jing Yunzhao was a little confused, not really understanding. What reason did he have to deliberately make his family worry? In the past, he would bring 7 or 8 bodyguards with him in the dark every time he went out, but this time, there was no one. Li Xiaoyun smiled and his eyes flashed. What others couldn't see, he might not be able to see. Su Wanqing's appearance just now, however, after all, it was just a guess. It was better not to say it out loud to agitate the woman in front of him. Jing Yunzhao relaxed a little after hearing Li Xiaoyun's words. Especially when she thought about it carefully, she felt that his words were indeed very reasonable. Sometimes, I feel a little lucky that you and I are not sworn enemies. Jing Yunzhao looked at Li Xiaoyun and suddenly said with a smile. Chapter 1242. Jing Yunzhao really meant what she said. Li Xiaoyun usually looked like he didn't have much of a presence, but his analysis was very thorough. No matter who it was, he was very clear about it. At this time, Li Xiaoyun stuffed a grape into his mouth and smiled. I think I should be the one saying this. If you were the target of my mission, I'm afraid I wouldn't have a chance to succeed in this lifetime. Aren't you thinking too highly of me? Don't you think I'm stupid? Jing Yunzhao smiled and was also a little curious. Many times, she needed to be reminded by people around her to understand something. Her reaction was not as fast as his. Stupid. That's because you didn't look back a few years ago. Li Xiaoyun didn't admit that there was a problem with his vision. He continued, besides, you're my wife. What's wrong with being a little stupid in front of me? And I can't wait for you to be a little stupid. Halfway through, Li Xiaoyun swallowed the second half of his sentence. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he took a grape and peeled it. Jing Yunzhao narrowed her eyes. She felt that he looked a little strange at this time, as if he wasn't thinking about anything serious. So stupid that you can eat me up easily. Jing Yunzhao guessed the second half of his sentence. You've wronged me. Do you think I'm that kind of person? Li Xiaoyun was amused. Aren't you? Jing Yunzhao looked at him with a scrutinizing gaze. Li Xiaoyun wiped his hands and sat up straight. Ah, Zhao, it seems that I need to work hard to correct your view of me. First of all, the phrase, eat you up, is not right at all. It's too elegant. As for me, I want to eat you alive. Of course, it's just a thought. I won't do it if the time isn't right. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. Eat. Lower body animal. Jing Yunzhao muttered at the side. She reached out, snatched the thing that he was about to put into his mouth, and swallowed it in one bite. Li Xiaoyun looked at the servant who was busy next to him. He then moved closer to Jing Yunzhao and reached out to hold her waist. His fingertips seemed to be touching the warm skin under her clothes. Jing Yunzhao suddenly shivered, but she was worried that there was someone next to them. She lowered her voice and said, "Stop fooling around. You said that I'm a lower body animal, then I shouldn't." Halfway through her words, Jing Yunzhao's face reddened. I was just casually saying it. But you have to take responsibility. My body is serious. Li Xiaoyun looked at her tense appearance and couldn't help but want to laugh. It was impossible for a woman who would throw up after being touched by a man back then to give up her most precious thing so easily. He had always kept this in mind, you. As long as you take it, you. Li Xiaoyun's hand paused and he couldn't help but laugh. He retracted his hand and looked at her. Women are the most vicious. Thank you for the compliment. Jing Yunzhao relaxed and her eyes flashed. Did you really take my compliment seriously? You think I'm really afraid? Li Xiaoyun tilted his head slightly, and a dangerous look flashed in his eyes. Jing Yunzhao of course knew that he had been giving in to her all this time. He couldn't take advantage of her. In this day and age, there weren't many men who could do what he did. At least until now, he had been very respectful to her. That. You can stay tonight. You can stay in the room next to mine. Jing Yunzhao smiled and asked tentatively. Chapter 1243. She sincerely wanted to spend the rest of her life with the man in front of her, so she was willing to work hard to get rid of some habits and defenses. I thought you were going to invite me to sleep in the same bed. Li Xiaoyun smiled and sighed, looking as if he had been hit hard. Jing Yunzhao glanced at him and said, "Even if I'm willing, you can't, right? My arm is still injured. I don't want to accidentally touch you." "Say it again." "What?" Jing Yunzhao was stunned. "You just said you were willing, right?" Li Xiaoyun smiled faintly and said, "Well, since that's the case, it would be impolite for me to refuse. It's getting late. I'll go wash up and wait for you on the bed." After that, Li Xiaoyun left Jing Yunzhao behind and went upstairs alone. He openly entered her room. When the servants saw this, they all looked at Jing Yunzhao with some surprise. Jing Yunzhao's face suddenly became very colorful, and the tips of her ears turned red. She was really asking for trouble. She knew Li Xiaoyun's temper, but she took the initiative to give him a chance to be thick-skinned. "You all go and rest," Jing Yunzhao said to the servants, and then added, "Don't talk too much, and don't tell my first uncle and the others." When the servants heard this, they hurriedly nodded. Since the great purge of the Su family, no one doubted Jing Yunzhao's words. Besides, she was no longer an underage girl. Li Xiaoyun had been to the Su family so many times, so the servants knew in their hearts that they were a couple openly showing their love. Only those who didn't know better would talk about it. She braced herself and followed upstairs. When she entered the room, she heard the sound of water coming from the bathroom. She was speechless. On the bed, there were many exquisite plush dolls, all of which were gifts from his two uncles. In the past, whenever Jing Yunzhao returned home, he would immediately go to the space, so he had never appreciated these things. But at this moment, he subconsciously held one of them and sat on the edge of the bed. His brows were furrowed, but because of the blush on his face, he didn't seem cold. Minutes and seconds passed by. Not long after, the sounds coming from the bathroom stopped. Jing Yunzhao looked over, only to see the bathroom door open and Li Xiaoyun walk out. Suddenly, Jing Yunzhao's face turned so red that it was almost steaming. She thought Li Xiaoyun was just teasing her. He even thought that his acting was really good. But the truth was, his lower body was wrapped in a towel. Other than that, he was completely naked. He walked up to her and climbed onto the bed. He pulled her into his embrace and said, "Be good. Time to sleep." Jing Yunzhao could smell the faint fragrance on his body. There were many old scars on his strong muscles. His breathing was still moving up and down beside her ear. Soon, it became a little heavy. "Xiaoyun." Jing Yunzhao called out in a low voice. There was no response. But from the angle that was blocked, Li Xiaoyun's lips curled up slightly. His long eyelashes fluttered twice. Jing Yunzhao sighed and moved away from his side. Her gaze swept across his body. There were 5 or 6 scars. The most shocking one was probably the one near his heart. The gunshot wound seemed to be quite old. Other than that, it was indeed very attractive. She didn't like that kind of sickly soft beauty, nor did she like overly masculine musclemen. Li Xiaoyun was just right. He didn't have any excess fat on his body, and his body proportions were impeccable. Coupled with his looks, if a slightly perverted woman came, she would probably pounce on him without saying a word. Chapter 1244. Jing Yunzhao's heart raced as she stood there for a while. After a few seconds, she took out a new blanket and laid down on the spot. It was easier to invite the devil than to send him away. Since he was already here, regardless of whether he was really asleep or pretending to be asleep, she couldn't send him away. Just as she was thinking, Li Xiaoyun rolled down from the bed and pressed against her body again, not moving an inch. "You're so shameless." Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. she didn't even dare to take a shower now. If this person barged in while she was taking a shower, he might turn around and say that she was seducing him. Okay, I'm shameless. You can say whatever you want. Li Xiaoyun narrowed his eyes and whispered into her ear. You're not asleep. That's great. Your room is next door. Jing Yunzhao's cold voice rang out again. Ah, Zhao, I promise I won't move. You're still wearing clothes. Nothing will happen. Don't worry. A few seconds later, Li Xiaoyun moved closer to Jing Yunzhao and hugged her tightly. Jing Yunzhao suddenly thought of He Di. That guy must have learned from Li Xiaoyun that he was so clingy. He was cold and aloof outside, but when he came home, he was so shameless. This was really unbearable. Jing Yunzhao opened her mouth and bit down on the arm in front of her. The man beside her groaned but still didn't open his eyes. He was determined to play dead until the end. Jing Yunzhao didn't use too much strength. After all, this was her man. If she bit too hard, she would be the one feeling heartache. Their breaths intertwined. She didn't know if it was the result of struggling, but slowly, the fragrance of his body spread out. She relaxed a lot and actually fell asleep for the first time. She had always been a light sleeper and would wake up at the slightest movement. Li Xiaoyun didn't know if he guessed this or if he was just a good match. He didn't move at all the whole night and maintained the same position. Jing Yunzhao slept all the way until dawn. When she woke up, she was still curled up in his arms. His arm was under her neck. When she raised her head, she saw his Adam's apple moving slightly. Just as he was wondering if he should get up, there was a knock on the door. Jing Yunzhao immediately got up. Li Xiaoyun, put on your clothes. All right. He smiled and was about to get up when Jing Yunzhao suddenly remembered that he was clean. His expression changed. Wait, I'll get your clothes for you. Hide yourself and wear them. You've already slept with me. Why are you still afraid of looking? Li Xiaoyun said faintly. The corners of his mouth curled up and he smiled charmingly. Jing Yunzhao couldn't wait to find a hole in the ground to hide in. Unfortunately, the knocking on the door sounded like a rush, making him anxious. Li Xiaoyun was also fast. He put on his pants and shirt and buttoned them while following behind her. Jing Yunzhao breathed a sigh of relief. When he opened the door, he saw Su Wenqing standing outside, staring at Li Xiaoyun. His face seemed to be cold. You didn't go back. Second Uncle Su, you're back. Li Xiaoyun looked relieved and said, last night, Zhao was very worried about you. She couldn't sleep all night and almost went out to dig up 3 feet of this capital city. Su Wenqing choked. From what he said, it was still his fault. He felt a wave of sadness in his heart. He only came back in the middle of the night last night. At that time, he went back to his own residence. However, he didn't see Xiao Zhao, who always woke up early, so he asked. Only then did he know that Li Xiaoyun, this beast, had taken advantage of his absence to enter the house. Chapter 1245. Su Wenqing regretted his actions and wished he could go back to last night. Unfortunately, reality slapped him hard in the face. He couldn't even reprimand Jing Yunzhao. He could only stare at Li Xiaoyun. Unfortunately, the man in front of him was the only one he couldn't do anything about. He glanced at the room and his heart skipped a beat. Li Xiaoyun's jacket was still on the floor and there was nothing on the bed. The bed sheets were messy and the blanket had fallen to the ground. It looked like a big fight had just taken place. Xiaoyun, follow me out for morning exercises, Second Uncle Su said in a low voice. Okay, Li Xiaoyun replied calmly. Second uncle, why couldn't I contact you last night? Where's Hai Qing? Is she okay? Jing Yunzhao hurriedly asked from behind. Su Wenqing squeezed out a smile. There was an accident. Her phone was broken and I accidentally locked my phone in the car. That's why I didn't receive your call. Xiao Zhao, don't worry. She's fine. I also apologized. The one who wasn't fine was him. He was physically and mentally injured. Jing Yunzhao nodded. The two men went out. Su Wenqing threw his jacket aside and rolled up his sleeves. I know you're an elite soldier, but no matter what you are, you should respect her. After he finished speaking, he threw a punch. Li Xiaoyun didn't dodge and took the hit. His face was instantly bruised. Then, he smiled gently and rubbed the injured area. He stared at Su Wenqing and said, Second Uncle Su, you had ulterior motives last night, right? Why did you purposely lose contact with her? Xiao Haiqing. Don't forget, she's your niece's best friend. Of course, I don't care what you do, but I can't bear to let her worry. After he finished speaking, he threw a punch. Li Xiaoyun didn't have any inner qi and didn't use any of his usual moves. Otherwise, Su Wenqing wouldn't have been able to beat him. Su Wenqing also knew that he had a guilty conscience, so he also took the punch. However, he had wanted to meet Li Xiaoyun for a long time. It had nothing to do with strength, age, or hatred. It was just two men who couldn't stand each other and needed to fight. Therefore, in a short while, the man was punching left and right and rolling on the ground a few times. When Jing Yunzhao heard the news, he wanted to stop them, but after thinking about it, he retracted his foot. Men's friendships seemed to need to be supported by their fists. Li Xiaoyun and second uncle didn't have any deep hatred at all. Usually, they just bickered. If there was an enemy, they would definitely be on the same side. No matter how much the two of them quarreled, it wouldn't reach the point where they couldn't tolerate each other. She knew this in her heart. Also, if Su Wenqing wasn't her second uncle, she would have helped Xiao Haiqing punch him last night. Just right, she could take this opportunity to let Li Xiaoyun do it for her. As for Li Xiaoyun getting beaten up, well, he deserved it. Outside, the two of them were fighting happily, but they didn't hurt each other's vital parts. At most, they deliberately made the other party look bad. After a long time, Su Wenqing sat on the lawn and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, Zhao's previous life was hard. It was the fault of everyone in the Su family. In the future, you will take care of her. I know. Li Xiaoyun licked his lips. This second Uncle Su, on the surface, didn't seem to have any martial arts value, but his strength was quite good. It was a pity that he didn't learn martial arts. It was a waste. Next time, he wouldn't deliberately hide his strength. But, thank you for doing so much behind her back all these years. Su Wenqing stood up, walked forward, and said softly. He also knew that if Li Xiaoyun didn't help her look up some information behind her back many times and help her deal with some troubles, she wouldn't have been able to achieve her current achievements so easily. Even Jing Yunzhao herself didn't know about some of the things he did. Chapter 1246. Su Wenqing's thanks could be considered as a smile dissolving the enmity between them. Li Xiaoyun replied calmly without the slightest bit of modesty. Su Wenqing glanced at him and snorted coldly, but he wasn't angry. If this kid was the same age as him, he might have become his brother. It was quite a pity. When the two of them returned to the house, they saw that their faces were a little bruised. Jing Yunzhao placed the prepared wine in front of the two of them. Seeing that the two of them were asking for her help, she smiled and ignored them. She didn't let the two of them personally pick her up and drove to school by herself. At noon, the sun was a little hot. Jing Yunzhao rejected Hua Tianxian and the others' good intentions and headed towards a small district in the capital. Near this small district was a nursing home. It was far from the city and the environment was pleasant, but there were very few young people there. Jing Yunzhao directly entered the district and went to the address provided by Dr. Yufu. The person she wanted to meet was from the side branch of the Jing clan, and also the head of the Jing clan's elders. The Jing clan still held the shares that once belonged to the Jing clan. After so many years of fighting with Li Wenbo, there weren't many shares left, but their influence was absolute. Most importantly, this person had great charisma and was absolutely loyal to the inheritance of the Jing clan. The descendants of the old ancestor were divided into several groups. Even in the modern era, the rules were the same as before. The first group was the direct line of descent, the one who truly inherited all the secret techniques of the Jing clan. Today, she was the only one left. The rest were the clansmen who had the blood of the Jing clan flowing in their bodies. Among these people, the ancestors who were blood brothers with the direct line of descent mostly became elders and were responsible for protecting everything in the Jing clan. They might not be proficient in medicine, but they definitely held a portion of the Jing clan's wealth in their hands. The Jing clan had an ancestral rule. As long as it was a descendant of the Jing clan, even if they didn't know medicine, they were required to pass the test of virtue. They were required to protect this 1,000-year-old treasure and not let it be lost. In other words, if it wasn't for the chaos of the war that year, everyone couldn't even take care of themselves, and Li Wenbo wouldn't have taken advantage of this loophole. The direct line of descent, the Jing clan clansmen, and the Jing clan disciples. These three formed the Jing clan. After a while, Jing Yunzhao knocked on the door. Not long after, a woman appeared in front of her and looked at her suspiciously. "May I ask, who are you looking for?" "Is Mr. Jing here?" Jing Yunzhao asked. "Who are you?" The other party was obviously the housekeeper of this house and was quite dutiful. "I'm the old Mister's junior. I have something I want to discuss with him. I'll have to trouble you to tell him that my name is Jing Yunzhao." Jing Yunzhao believed that as long as the old mister heard her name, he would definitely meet her. The other party glanced at her but didn't chase her out directly. "Wait a moment." After saying that, she closed the door and returned to her room. However, a few minutes later, the door opened again. "Please come in. The old master is in the study upstairs. You can go there." After the other party finished speaking, he pointed to a room for Jing Yunzhao and went to do his own things. The house more or less felt a little old. There were many calligraphy and paintings in the room. After learning from Mo Xingyan for so long, she had some understanding of these antiques. She could tell that even if the things here weren't authentic, they were expensive imitations that were difficult to distinguish. The style of the house was relatively old. The dark red handrails on both sides of the stairs exuded a woody fragrance. The door to the study was open, so Jing Yunzhao directly walked in. Looking inside, it was actually a big room that had been opened up. Rows of bookshelves were placed inside, and the room was filled with incense that could repel mosquitoes. At the end of the room, an old man was sitting upright. Chapter 1247. The old man was holding a book in his hand. He wore a pair of round-rimmed glasses and an ancient tang suit. His hair was covered in silver, and his aged face had a white beard that was as long as a finger. She walked over. Her footsteps were light but audible. The old man didn't even raise his head. Jing Yunzhao had inquired about the identity of the person in front of her before she came. Jing Rong was already in his 90s. Even if her own grandmother was here, she would have to call him uncle. When it came to her, it was great-granduncle. However, she was the heir of the Jing family and her surname wasn't Li. Therefore, she had to change the word uncle to uncle. Great-granduncle, Jing Yunzhao called out. The old man raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. Who are you? The old man asked slowly. He looked a little weak. However, Jing Yunzhao was a doctor. Although the old man in front of her was old, judging by his appearance, he could live for at least another 20 years. He was probably pretending to be weak to scare her off. Greetings, great-granduncle. I am Jing Yunzhao. My grandmother is Jing Wenyue. Jing Yunzhao wasn't stupid enough to say, my grandfather is Li Wenbo. Oh. Wenyue's granddaughter. The old man pretended to say, isn't your surname Li? Li Wenbo's granddaughter, Li Tianyi's daughter, right? When he said this, Jing Yunzhao knew that he paid a lot of attention to the Li family. Therefore, she smiled and said, just a few days ago, Li Wenbo personally admitted that his son is called Jing Tianyi. Li Wenbo is indeed my grandfather, but my surname is Jing. We are two completely different people. The old man's beard moved. Why are you here? The old man asked again. This junior wants to ask for great-granduncle's help. Jing Yunzhao lowered her head and said politely, you are an elder of the Jing family. I believe that many people in the Jing family prioritize you. Li Wenbo has occupied the Jing family's assets for so many years. It's time for him to pay back. I'm just an old man. I don't care so much, Jing Rong said again. Great-granduncle, you're undervaluing yourself. Since I dared to come, I must have made up my mind. I believe that the Jing family's people are not cowards, nor are they immoral people who go against the teachings of their ancestors. Jing Yunzhao said straightforwardly. Jing Rong finally put down the book in his hand and looked at her seriously. After a while, he sneered, the Jing family's direct line has collapsed. If you truly hold the inheritance in your hands, it would be natural for me to help you. I would also be following my ancestors' instructions. However, you're only an 18 or 19-year-old little girl. You've only relied on business to gain some fame. I'm not that you fool. Just by seeing the bloodline in your body, I'll loyally provide for you. In my eyes, even if you're that girl Wenyue's granddaughter, you're only an ordinary person. However, if it was in her previous life, even if she knew that she was a member of the Jing family, she wouldn't have done so much. In this world, there was no one else who had inherited more than her. Great-granduncle, do you think my medical skills are low? Jing Yunzhao smiled. How many years have you studied medicine? The old man asked seriously. Not long. Even if I had, I wouldn't be as old as you. Jing Yunzhao said honestly. That's right. I have children and grandchildren. Even my great-grandchildren are older than you. They have studied medicine longer than you. What ability do you have to surpass them? If I really want to revive the Jing family, I would rather help one of the direct lines. Why must I choose you? Chapter 1248. Jing Yunzhao understood Jing Rong's words. With Jing Rong's status and ability, he was now shoulder to shoulder with the Li family. The only thing he lacked was the words, inheritance and legitimacy. But in this day and age, outside of the Jing family, outsiders didn't think that inheritance was that important. If Jing Rong were to replace her, he would be more qualified than Li Wenbo. But if he wanted to, he would have done it long ago. He probably wouldn't be able to get past the hurdle in his heart. It wasn't just him, the other elders of the Jing family were the same. It was impossible for them to go against their original intention of interacting with each other since they were young. Moreover, they knew clearly in their hearts what they were good at. The direct line of descent had been honed for thousands of years. It was the result of continuous selection and education. Each of them even had an innate talent for learning medicine, which was simply incomparable to others. Great-granduncle, we are all descendants of the Jing family. It doesn't matter who the heir is, but the secret techniques of the Jing family are all in my hands. This is something that no one else can compare to. I think you should have already asked about my company. Those recipes for wine and medicine were all made by me. If I didn't inherit the most important thing of the Jing family, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Jing Yunzhao smiled confidently, showing off her elegance. She then continued, I dare to guarantee that my medical skills are better than your children's, and even better than yours. You can let them be the heir, but on the surface, it will never be real. You said you inherited those things. How can you prove it? The old man's breathing was steady. He was obviously not angry at her words. Those are all real skills. Isn't it easy to prove? You can find a patient for me to treat. Jing Yunzhao said again. Although the outside world admired her medical skills, it wasn't to the point of fanaticism. Many people thought that her skills were no different from those of the doctors. She could only cure illnesses. However, not everyone could do something as simple as, if you're sick, you can treat it. There were many terminal illnesses in the world. Jing Yunzhao didn't dare to guarantee that she would be able to bring all of them back to life, but she did have the ability to treat them. Even if the other party still died, it would definitely be different from dying on the operating table. You are quite arrogant. The old man looked at her and smiled. Good. Since you are so capable, I will recommend you a patient. This person is in the capital. He has been sick for about 3 years. There is no shortage of famous doctors around him. His identity. Jing Rong's eyes flashed as he continued, I have investigated you. The man by your side is Li Xiaoyun and his grandfather is Li Junwei. But do you know who is the person that even Li Junwei has to give face to? If he is standing in front of you, would you dare to treat him? Jing Yunzhao frowned, you're talking about cheese. If Li's a god in the military, then Li's a god, to be the unshakable leader. By the time he finished speaking, Jing Yunzhao was already shocked. Although she didn't experience some of the history, she had heard and learned about it. Qi Yugua could be said to be Grandpa Li's elder, teacher, and friend. He could even be said to be his father. Chapter 1249. The textbooks often describe the life and death relationship between Grandpa Li and Qi Yugua during the war. Although she was excited to hear his name, she was also puzzled. Based on the relationship between Grandpa Li and that leader, if he was really sick, wouldn't Li Xiaoyun have asked her to help him? Why didn't he mention it before? What do you think? Do you dare? Jing Rong laughed and said, I might as well remind you that although Qi Yugua is more than 110 years old, his body is still in good condition. After all, there are many famous doctors around him. However, he has countless old injuries and he can't endure the pain every day. He may not want to live. If you can save someone who wants to die, I will be your great uncle and recognize you as the head of the Jing family. I will do my best to support you and kill everyone in the Li family. Was it difficult to get rid of the Li family? It wasn't difficult, but it was difficult to get the approval of the Jing family. Jing Yunzhao lowered her eyebrows and thought for a moment. After hearing great-granduncle's words, she finally understood why Li Xiaoyun and Grandpa Li didn't introduce her to Qi Yugua. It was because he didn't want to live at all. There was no meaning in living when a person was old and sick. It would be a sin to save him. However, even though he was old and couldn't go on the battlefield to kill the enemy, he was still the spiritual support of the army. If this person died, then the people who had once worshipped him as a god and respected him would no longer be restrained, and each of them would have their own power. Those who held power in the past were still there. Everyone was ambitious. Without an elder to control them, how could there be no chaos? Therefore, no matter how painful it was, this spiritual leader had to live. He had to live until the power in the army was distributed evenly. He had to live until they could restrain each other. He had to live until the ambition of others faded with age. It was a pity and sad. I can try. After a long time, Jing Yunzhao opened her mouth. The old man's eyes flashed with shock and surprise. Indeed, this was a test. If she failed, she would have to bear a lot of pressure from the army. Even if she had Yunling Medical in her hands, she couldn't withstand the anger of those old men. What was the consequence of offending the entire army? Even if Li Xiaoyun could protect her, he would have to pay a great price. Not bad. You have guts. You don't lose to men. It was rare for great-granduncle to praise him. Jing Yunzhao smiled bitterly, but he did not back down. She was willing to gamble with her life because she had promised her ancestor that she would inherit the medical skills and bring them to greater heights. She had also secretly promised in front of her mother's grave that she would crush the Li family in terms of reputation and power. She would make them get out of the sight of the Su and Jing families in the most embarrassing way possible. Although she had martial arts and could use underhanded moves to kill all of them like an assassin, that was different. The first time she saw so many ancestral tablets of immortal Crane Hall, she felt an unprecedented reverence and respect. She wouldn't use such a method to regain her past glory. Even if her hands were stained with blood, she would use the cleanest and brightest method to inherit the Jing clan. Therefore, she had no choice but to accept this test. May I know when the treatment will start? Jing Yunzhao followed up with another question. No hurry. Go back and prepare. It's almost your holiday, right? When the time comes, someone will go to the Su family to pick you up. Great-granduncle added, proving that he had been paying attention to Jing Yunzhao. Chapter 1250. Jing Yunzhao nodded in response, then turned around and left resolutely. It was already summer outside, and it was a little hot, but Jing Yunzhao felt cold all over. That was Qi Yugua, the only person in the entire country, a god that even Grandpa Li and the others respected and didn't dare to offend. Not only did this illness have to be cured, but it also had to be cured so that Qi Yugua himself wanted to live, so this was the most difficult part. After all, if Qi Yugua got better, but he resented her, then she wouldn't get any benefits either. Jing Yunzhao sighed. After relieving the stuffy feeling in her chest, she looked at the sunlight and slowly revealed a smile. Her life was a gamble. For the sake of the belief in her heart, this gamble, no matter what, was worth it. After returning to school, Jing Yunzhao went to the library and read some books about Qi Yugua, but after all, they were all things written in books, so they were more or less exaggerated. She only saw how patriotic Qi Yugua was, and didn't see much of his other private deeds. After thinking about it, it should be Grandpa Li who knew him better, so after school that night, Jing Yunzhao directly called Li Xiaoyun. Li Xiaoyun's car appeared as promised. As soon as he got in, Jing Yunzhao told him what happened during the day. You want to treat Elder Qi? Li Xiaoyun frowned, obviously disapproving. I already agreed. Jing Yunzhao nodded, so I want to ask you and Grandpa Li what kind of person Elder Qi is. After understanding clearly, it'll be easier to treat the illness. Ah Zhao, this isn't a good job. Let's put it this way. 3 years ago, he suddenly fell seriously ill not because of his body, but because of his mental state. Because he couldn't bear the daily torture of nightmares and the old pain in his body, he chose to commit suicide. Unfortunately, he was discovered in time and saved his life. For the past 3 years, he has been recuperating in bed. There are guards around him every 3 steps, and there are more than 10 famous doctors and nurses. In other words, there are people watching over him at all times. His life is good, but he has already. Li Xiaoyun sighed. This was the sorrow of being a king. Why did his grandfather stop in time to rest at home and not see anyone? It was because he didn't want to follow Qi Yugua's path. Qi Yugua's life was definitely the most valuable. He had been a soldier since he was young, and his status had never been low. During the war, many orphans like his grandfather were picked up and sent to the battlefield. Many people's lives were saved by him. Even though he was old now, there were many people who respected him, and they all held great power in their hands. How could such a person be treated? Those dozens of famous doctors were for fame and money. They weren't afraid of Qi Yugua, because they weren't his relatives, but the Li family. His grandfather was brought up by Qi Yugua, and he had been by Qi Yugua for a long time, so he absolutely couldn't bear to see him suffer such pain. That was why he didn't ask for help to treat him. To put it bluntly, he would rather that deity fall and be free. Of course, this was only selfish. In terms of country, he didn't dare to let him die. Jing Yunzhao frowned. So it's actually like this. Suicide. If word got out, wouldn't the whole country feel sad? But since you've already agreed, then do it seriously. Others may not have the ability, but you may not be the same, Li Xiaoyun said again. Maybe it could reduce Qi Yugua's pain. He didn't look for her before because he didn't want her to gamble, but now that he had to gamble, he could only rush forward. Chapter 1251. After saying that, Li Xiaoyun looked at the nervous expression on Jing Yunzhao's face and smiled. Are you afraid now? Not really. I just feel that the old man is quite pitiful, Jing Yunzhao muttered. With his position, he can only contribute to the country. In some people's eyes, it might be an honor. Elder Qi is not someone who is afraid of death, and he knows his own importance. However, the pain is not something an ordinary person can endure. Speaking of which, it is all thanks to you. After your painkillers were released, he was able to relieve a lot of his pain, Li Xiaoyun said. Looks like you know him very well. Can you tell me more? Jing Yunzhao asked. I only know a part of it. When I was living by Elder Qi's side, he was already old. Although he was still full of vigor back then, he had already lost his combat ability. Li Xiaoyun paused for a bit before continuing. Elder Qi had no children, so my grandfather sent me to his side. I learned a lot from him, but it was not for long. After all, he was getting older and older. Even my grandfather did not dare to take the risk. Otherwise, if something happened to him, I would be the first one to suffer. Then, Li Xiaoyun said a few more things. According to him, Elder Qi was still a very kind person more than a decade ago. But now, it was hard to say. Not long after, Jing Yunzhao arrived at Grandpa Li's residence. Ever since the old man left home, he had been practicing martial arts day and night, so he was very energetic. The moment he saw her, his originally majestic old face instantly bloomed into a smile. Good girl, have you forgotten about your grandfather? Grandpa Li was still very straightforward. Jing Yunzhao rarely came over, mainly because the old man was too direct. Every time he came, he would either ask her to give birth to a great-grandson quickly or praise her non-stop. She did not know if it was because she had been scolded too much in her 2 lifetimes, but every time the old man spoke, she would feel embarrassed and guilty. Grandpa, your martial arts are getting more and more impressive. I think I should let you go on missions with Xiaoyun next time, Jing Yunzhao joked. She was already familiar with the old man. Ha ha ha. It's impressive, but it's not the same when it comes to missions. The guns we used back then are different from the ones we use now. The difference is huge. Maybe I'll be shot dead the moment I get on the battlefield. Old Masterly didn't avoid it at all. After saying those two sentences, he changed the topic. But my name should be able to scare a few people to death. Isn't that so? Grandpa, you have the halo of the god of war shining above your head. You don't have to do anything at all. Jing Yunzhao also smiled and said with admiration. When the old master heard this, he was overjoyed. Li Xiaoyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the grandfather-grandson duo. Old master, you're such a good kid. Today, you put honey on your mouth in order to get information from you. Oh. What does my dear baby want to know? Grandpa promises to tell you everything, Old Masterly said straightforwardly. Jing Yunzhao blushed and smiled ingratiatingly. I promise to treat Mr. Qi. In order to avoid any accidents, I wanted to find out more about Mr. Qi's character with you. As soon as he said that, Li Junwei's smile froze on his face. You didn't tell her that treating this illness could cost her her life. Li Junwei stared at Li Xiaoyun coldly. I did. Li Xiaoyun shrugged, expressing his innocence. Li Junwei sighed and said earnestly, why do you have to go? My dear baby, if it were anyone else, would be able to protect you. But Mr. Qi. He has the entire military involved. If something happens, even I might not be able to suppress it. Chapter 1252. While Old Manly was worried, he was also looking forward to it. He had long known that Jing Yunzhao had medical skills, and it wasn't that he hadn't thought of asking her for help. However, he and his grandson both knew that if it involved Qi Yugua, then it would be an opportunity. Their colleagues would also be trouble, so they kept their mouths shut. They just didn't think that Jing Yunzhao would bump into the muzzle of the gun. This is a test proposed by one of my elders. Grandpa Li, you also know what kind of situation the Jing family was in the past. If I want to take back everything that I once had, I need the support of the Jing family's elders. However, if I'm incompetent, what right do I have to make them lower their heads? Jing Yunzhao explained to Old Man Li. She wouldn't ask others to sacrifice for her just because she was the heir of the Jing family. The most important thing was strength. Li Junwei was a daring person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the reputation he had today. When he heard Jing Yunzhao's words, he smiled instead. Good. You're indeed my granddaughter-in-law. You're right. If you want others to submit to you, you have to pay the price and prove yourself first. You're going to treat a patient, not to die. You've seen through it. No matter what others say, it's all bullshit. Old Master Leaf sighed and drank a cup of tea. He then said, this Qi Yugua is a strange person. Back then, I was just a frisky monkey in a small village in Huaning County. Because my parents had passed away, I didn't do anything serious. When I was looking for food in Daong Mountain, I was spotted by Qi Yugua. At that time, he was just a small company commander. According to Old Master Li, back then, he saw a wild rabbit but couldn't catch it. Then, he saw a group of soldiers hiding in the mountain with guns. Because he was extremely hungry, he didn't think too much and snatched Qi Yugua's gun to shoot the wild rabbit. Qi Yugua had seen many children but he was really scared by Li Changshu back then. After all, he was just a child and dared to play with a gun. This was amazing. Most importantly, this gun was used to survive on the battlefield. Chi Yugwa was surprised by his courage and luck. After knowing that he didn't have parents, he took him with him. Back then, Old Master Li only wanted to have a bite to eat and thought that he could shoot the rabbit with a gun. Therefore, he was very willing. There were many half-grown children in the group. Chi Yugwa treated them very well and even doted on them as if they were his own sons. He was a person with a foundation in martial arts and had learned a lot from many hermits. In order to save the lives of these children, he had taught them everything he could. Chi Yugwa was still a scholar. Back then, there weren't many people who could read and write, but he knew everything and loved to learn everything. After he learned everything, he didn't use it for himself. Instead, he taught it to this group of frisky monkeys. Among them, Old Master Li was considered the most talented. Even the name Li Junwei was given by Chi Yugwa. It could be said that this was the kindness of being reborn. He was no different from his parents. Later on the battlefield, the two of them saved each other many times. They were friends who had gone through life and death. Not only Li Junwei, but many others were the same. It was all thanks to Chi Yugwa that they could be where they were today. Chi Yugwa was a righteous person. He was a person who only cared about his country, his brothers, and his subordinates. He didn't care about himself. Chapter 1253. Chi Yugwa had relied on his outstanding abilities and military achievements to finally reach a position that no one could compare to. He had once been on the brink of death and had been captured by the enemy. No one could imagine the suffering he had gone through, but there had never been anything that could defeat him. When Li Junwei mentioned Chi Yugwa's past, he said bluntly, "There is a type of person who doesn't need to go to the battlefield to stabilize the morale of the army. Chi Yugwa is one of them." Of course, it was the same for Li Junwei later on. However, Li Junwei was not that old after all, so he did not experience as much as Chi Yugwa. Chi Yugwa had seen this turbulent world slowly return to peace, and the weight of his memory was different. He's a very wise man. When he's not fighting, he likes to watch a bunch of little brats practice martial arts and spear, and he likes to listen to the little brats read books. In his words, if it weren't for the war, he might have become a teacher to train the next generation. Unfortunately, he dedicated his life to the army and didn't even have a child. Good boy, if you see Elder Chi, be more tolerant. If it wasn't for him back then, half of those old things in the military region would have died. He's old now, and he probably wants those little brats from back then to teach him things in return. Unfortunately, Old Master Li shook his head secretly. Just like him, he also wanted to talk to him. Was it possible? Impossible. It wasn't that he couldn't see him, but that he couldn't bear to see him. For the country, for the family, and for the people, he could only exhaust his life and make the best use of his exhausted life. Speaking of which, Li Junwei wasn't afraid of anything in his life, but he didn't dare to continue moving forward. He was the person closest to the power center where Chi Yugwa was, but later on, when he saw the army's reliance on this spiritual leader, he decisively retreated. He didn't care about power, but this freedom was more important to him. He didn't ask for much. He didn't even want his children and grandchildren to be filial. As long as he could drink wine, eat meat, and play with guns, that was enough. The Chi Yugwa that Old Master Li mentioned was indeed different. He also had a small temper, had his strengths and weaknesses, and was a living person. According to the old man, Chi Yugwa liked to listen to opera. When he was young, he also liked a beautiful girl. Unfortunately, that girl died in the war. He didn't like people who were too noisy, because when it came to reasoning, no one was better than him. He had many interests, such as reading, playing chess, astronomy, and geography, but he liked everything that was new and unknown to him. Unknowingly, Jing Yunzhao was stunned. Beside him, Li Xiaoyun narrowed his eyes and seemed to be immersed in his memories. Time passed unknowingly. Jing Yunzhao didn't know how much he had heard about Qi Yugua. The old man recounted almost everything that had happened after he met Qi Yugua. He finished the cups of tea in front of him, and his throat was a little hoarse. Jing Yunzhao looked at old man Li's tired appearance. She originally wanted to come again next time, but Li Xiaoyun told her to listen quietly. Maybe to old man Li, reminiscing about their past brotherly love and friendship was more meaningful than sitting in the courtyard under the sun. For the entire night, Jing Yunzhao listened to the story. From the bottom of her heart, she admired people like Qi Yugua and Elder Li. Even on the second day in school, she was a little absent-minded. Why did you suddenly want to read these books? In the class, Jing Yunzhao hugged a thick history book and saw the scattered pictures inside. They overlapped with Elder Li's words. Hua Tianxian, who was beside her, looked puzzled. She felt that her personality had suddenly changed. Chapter 1254. Because it was already summer, it was time for Hua Tianxian to be gorgeously dressed. Her cool and refreshing appearance attracted countless boys to chase after her. Only in front of Jing Yunzhao would her peacock-like image improve. You need to understand the history of the past so that you can cherish your current life, Jing Yunzhao said to himself. Hua Tianxian chuckled when she heard this. I remember you saying that people should look forward. But, the men of the past were much more hot-blooded than they are now. Look at the men in our class and look at Qi Zhong. They are completely different. In Hua Tianxian's eyes, Qi Zhong was no different from the hot-blooded men of the past. Jing Yunzhao glanced at her silently. When it came to the military, Qi Zhong was the only one that came to her mind. She didn't know when the two of them had met again, but it seemed to have reignited the little flame in her. Not only that, but she had also suddenly sent away her 3 potential marriage partners. Jing Yunzhao couldn't figure out what was going on with Hua Tianxian, so he didn't care. She grew up in a family like that, so she knew how to protect herself better than Xiao Haiqing. Take her sister, Hua Tianxin, for example. In the past, she used to think that she was a dove that wanted to take over the magpie's nest because of Hua Tianxin's love. Now, she had been tortured to the point that she was very obedient. Hua Dad and Hua Tianxin's mother had an agreement that they could play as much as they wanted in private, but they couldn't have other children. Hua Dad broke the agreement, so they divorced. Now, Hua Tianxin's mother was the one in control of Hua Jewelry. Hua Tianxin didn't benefit at all. Even Hua Dad thought that this illegitimate daughter was stupid. Although Hua Tianxian was still young, she had already started to learn how to manage the Hua family's company. After she graduated, or after a few more years of experience, she would be able to sit firmly in that position. Jing Yunzhao, don't you think Han Nan is becoming more and more well-behaved lately? Apart from glancing at you once in a while, he hasn't pursued you at all. That's so strange. While Jing Yunzhao was thinking, Hua Tianxian spoke up again. Isn't that perfect? Jing Yunzhao replied casually. Hua Tianxian pursed her lips in disapproval. The matter of Han Nan's parents coming to the school to beg Jing Yunzhao for help only to have their water broken by her had never been told to her. If she knew that Han Nan's parents had done something like this, she probably wouldn't think the same way anymore. However, it wasn't a big deal. After all, they had already been chased away. But this Han Nan was too much of a coward. His parents had been splashed with cold water by her, but he didn't even mention it. You're right. It's better to stay as far away from rotten peach blossoms as possible. Hua Tianxian turned to look at Han Nan and said, "Your current status is very eye-catching. In the past, people tried to get close to me because of the Hua family's wealth. Now, there's another type. They want me to introduce you to them. Almost all of the Hua family's friends and relatives have mentioned you to me." Although it had caused her some trouble, one of the reasons she was accepted by the company's shareholders was because of her connections with Jing Yunzhao. In the past, President Jing's identity was still considered a mystery. However, after the incident with Xiao Haiqing, many people had found out about her young age, especially those from wealthy families. "Thank you for your hard work, Miss Hua. How about I treat you to a few more meals in the future?" Jing Yunzhao replied with a smile. "Sure. I only eat big meals," Hua Tianxian replied casually. Chapter 1255. With Hua Tianxian, Yao Baobao, and the others at school, time passed by quickly. A few days later, the holidays arrived. Jing Yunzhao's mood became a bit uneasy as she waited quietly at the Su family's house. The day before Jing Yunzhao's holidays, Li Xiaoyun had another mysterious mission. Jing Yunzhao felt that it was a pity, but when she thought about how she was going to visit Qi Yugua, she calmed down a lot. On the third day, black cars lined up in front of the Su family's gate. It was a little scary. When Grandfather Su heard that she was going to treat Qi Yugua's illness, he only frowned but didn't cower. In his eyes, whatever his granddaughter did was right. She dared to do and fight. That was the courage of the Jing family. As for the consequences, he didn't care. Su Yuantek and Su Wenqing were different. Both of them were cautious and extremely uneasy. The military and politics had always been connected. If Jing Yunzhao lost, it would have a great impact on Su Yuantek. Of course, although Su Yuantek was worried about himself, he was more worried about Jing Yunzhao's life. The Su family had a 1,000-year heritage. They didn't lack wealth, but in terms of military power, they were no match for the Li family. Fortunately, with the Li family's help, the Su family's brothers could relax a little. The people who came to pick her up were all soldiers. Each of them was filled with a murderous aura. Jing Yunzhao was invited to the car in the middle and immediately became a protected person. The identity of anyone who could help Qi Yugua's condition was equally important. Qi Yugua had gone to a neighboring country to recuperate for a period of time. However, he didn't get better and was sent back. Although he was now in the capital, his location was relatively remote. It was even halfway up a mountain. In the past, it used to be a large temple. Later, it was renovated into a large house that was isolated from the world. The house was guarded all around, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. This was also to prevent enemy spies from assassinating him. After Jing Yunzhao entered the mansion, she only felt that her whole body had become a little stuffy. The air in the mountains was indeed good, but there were too many people here. There was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 5 steps, which made it hard for people to breathe. The ground was spotless and emitted a faint smell of disinfectant, which made her very unhappy. As for the rooms inside, although they were not comparable to the maze, they were all the same. There were also many young nurses, but they did not even have a smile on their faces. It looked unlucky. Jing Yunzhao felt that even a young person like her would feel uncomfortable living in such an environment, let alone an elderly patient. But after all, there were more than 10 famous doctors here. Other than the bad environment, there was nothing wrong with the smell of the medicine from afar. Li Xiaoyun had also given her the information of these famous doctors in advance, so she knew about them. Among these people, more than half were Western doctors, and the remaining 4 or 5 were national healers. These national healers came from various medical families, and one of them was originally a disciple of the Jing clan, but now he was an important connection of Li Wenbo. Simply put, he was a person who betrayed the Jing clan and mixed with Li Wenbo. When the forest was big, there were all kinds of birds. It was impossible to expect all the disciples of the Jing clan to be loyal for a lifetime. Li Wenbo could provide this person with money, medicine, and all kinds of patience. It was understandable even if she didn't agree with it. After a long time, Jing Yunzhao went through layers of checks before she was able to enter the door. Her medicine box was turned upside down, just to make sure that she didn't bring any lethal weapons. Chapter 1256. After entering the room, Jing Yunzhao felt a lot of auras. There were nurses, doctors, soldiers, and... Jing Yunzhao frowned. She probably knew that there should be someone hiding in the dark, but the strange thing was that the smell was very familiar. That faint sandalwood smell was a bit like Li Xiaoyun's. Could it be that his mysterious mission this time was to protect Qi Yugua? When Jing Yunzhao came in, except for a few doctors, no one looked at her, and no one cared. Obviously, it was up to them how to treat the patient. All they wanted was the result. Jing Yunzhao didn't care about the others. Looking at the person lying on the bed, there was some sympathy in her eyes. His hair was white, and his wrinkled face was full of age spots. There wasn't much meat on his body, and he looked like a salted fish that had been dried in the sun. There was an instrument in his hand, and his fingers were skinny. However, his skin was as thick as tree bark, and the calluses on his body had become a mark of wind and frost. There was a small green wound on his hand that was slightly swollen. It should be caused by a long-term drip, and his skin was a little sallow. There was a strong smell of all kinds of medicine in the room. Jing Yunzhao walked over. Under everyone's gaze, she directly reached out to check his pulse. It was beating quite strongly, and there was no problem with his life. However, when she checked his pulse, Jing Yunzhao saw the scar on his wrist. The scar left by suicide. This was probably the most embarrassing thing in his life. Feeling the touch on his hand, the old man opened his eyes. His deep eye sockets were heavy, and his eyes were full of vicissitudes and lacked spirit. Jing Yunzhao smiled. "Elder Qi, you're awake." She rarely smiled like this in front of strangers, but in front of such an old man, it was sincere. "New, nurse." He glanced at her and opened his mouth, which was rare of him. This young nurse was good-looking and had a cold heroic spirit. She was funny but sweet, and it was very comfortable to look at. "Yes, I'm the new nurse." Jing Yunzhao nodded and asked, "You've been sleeping for a long time, right? Are you hungry?" "I'm just a little chef." When Jing Yunzhao said this, the faces of the doctors at the side were a little unhappy. Everyone had always been responsible for Elder Qi's health. What he ate every day was carefully arranged, and they even found a nutritionist to study it together. It was absolutely beneficial to Elder Qi's health. But this girl said that she was a chef. What did she mean by that? She was going to cook. Wasn't that the same as changing their minds? Qi Yugua lived the same life every day. When he heard a nurse say that he was a cook, his eyes lit up. "Okay, let's make something delicious." Jing Yunzhao smiled and nodded. The kitchen was separated from the ward. Jing Yunzhao was not stupid enough to cook by himself. Otherwise, when he came back, he was afraid that someone would have already prepared the food for him. Although the others had good intentions, there was no common ground between people with different goals. These people wanted him to live, but she wanted to live. Elder Qi was not under house arrest. He had enough power. It was just that no one dared to exercise his power with him. At this time, Jing Yunzhao directly shook the bed and pulled out the equipment. She said with a bright face, "I'm afraid that you'll eat by yourself first. Why don't we go to the kitchen together?" Qi Yuguo was stunned for a moment. To be honest, he just felt that this little girl was good-looking, so he casually responded. He didn't really want to eat the food she cooked. After all, she was just a little nurse. It was impossible for her to go against the orders of these doctors. Chapter 1257. But now, this little girl seemed to be speaking with certainty, which made him feel a little strange. After thinking for a while, he said, "You're the new doctor, right?" Jing Yunzhao paused for a moment before nodding with a smile. Qi Yuguo's face immediately turned cold. Doctors were all the same. They wanted him to live, no matter how painful it was. He was really not afraid of pain in the past. He still remembered being captured by the enemy dozens of years ago. He didn't spit out a single word even when the burning red iron was on his body. In his opinion, the pain was his pride. But it was different now. He was an old man and really couldn't stand the torment. He also wanted to live well for the country, but not in this way. He would rather be stabbed by the enemy than have his own people desperately stuffing medicine into his mouth. "Get out," Qi Yuguo said immediately. Jing Yunzhao's expression remained the same. "It seems that you don't want to eat. Then I'll go by myself. But there won't be another shop after this village. If you want to eat, you can only wait until tonight." After saying that, Jing Yunzhao turned and left. As long as she was still on this mountain, her freedom was not controlled. The other doctors breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly connected the equipment. Jing Yunzhao, this doctor, came suddenly. It was said that she had the Li family behind her, so if she really insisted, they might not be able to resist. Fortunately, Elder Qi knew his limits and didn't act recklessly. "Elder Qi, your lunch will be here soon." The moment Jing Yunzhao went out, she heard the people inside flattering her. She pursed her lips and sneered. Lunch? When she passed by the kitchen on her way here, she already smelled what it was. There wasn't any sweet and delicious smell of food at all. It was probably something high in nutrition. There shouldn't be much salt. Jing Yunzhao didn't care much and walked around the mansion. The mansion was surrounded by an open space and some things were planted. Then there was a wall, and outside the wall was the forest. There weren't many ingredients in the kitchen, or rather, they were all normal things. Elder Qi ate this type of food every day, so he probably flipped it over, let alone stuffed it into his stomach. If he really ate it, would he have become so thin? Jing Yunzhao left the mansion alone and walked into the forest. However, she was also followed by 2 soldiers. They weren't very close and didn't affect her much. This mountain forest was full of good things. Wild vegetables, wild mushrooms, game. She was holding a few bags from the kitchen. She kept putting things she saw and things she could use into the bags. The 2 people following her didn't care about what she was doing. There were vegetarian dishes, but they lacked meat. Jing Yunzhao wandered around the forest and found a wild rabbit. She secretly flicked a silver needle at it, and the rabbit didn't manage to turn the corner and directly crashed into a tree to its death. In the distance, the 2 people's mouths twitched. No wonder Boss said not to get too close and just follow from afar. He also said that no matter what they saw, they just had to pretend not to see it. At first, they didn't understand, but now they understood. It turned out that this little doctor was a person with heaven-defying luck. She really got whatever she wanted. Look at how fat that rabbit was, the meat must be very fragrant. Jing Yunzhao picked up the rabbit and started to walk back. As she walked, there was a faint movement in the tree. The two people's expressions changed and they quickly took out their guns and aimed in her direction. However, before they could shoot, Jing Yunzhao had already moved in advance and immediately grabbed the poisonous snake's weak point. Chapter 1258. The snake in Jing Yunzhao's hand was sticking out its tongue at her. She had seen a lot of snakes, insects, rats, and ants with her grandfather before, so she could tell at a glance whether the snake was poisonous or not. However, she was not afraid of being poisonous. As long as the snake's head was removed and processed, it would be delicious. Immediately, Jing Yunzhao took out some medicinal powder from her pocket and sprinkled it on the snake's body. In an instant, the venomous snake, which was still acting arrogant, stopped moving and was directly stuffed into her bag. The two people who were watching from the side were dumbfounded. This was because when Jing Yunzhao came, she had searched for her and confirmed that she didn't bring a gun before letting her in. However, with her skills, even if she didn't use a gun, there wouldn't be any difference. Of course, they also knew that Jing Yunzhao was recommended by the Li family and an old doctor. The previous search was just superficial. In fact, it was not necessary. Jing Yunzhao returned from a rewarding journey. When she walked past the sentries, she could clearly feel their astonishment, but she still maintained a calm expression, without the slightest bit of nervousness. In the end, she found a suitable spot, got some utensils from the kitchen, and started cooking in the courtyard. The sun at noon was warmer. The curtains in Qi Yugua's room were opened. After eating, he began to read a book under the sun. However, as he was reading, he was attracted by a figure not far away. The window was bulletproof and could not be opened, but the glass was transparent and did not hinder the vision. He only saw Jing Yunzhao holding a simple knife and a snake on the chopping board. She cut off the snake's head and tail as if there was no one around. She did not mind the blood. Then she cut open the belly, removed the intestines, scales, and skin, and carefully put the snake's gallbladder aside. After doing all this, Jing Yunzhao put the processed snake into a casserole pot, added scallions, ginger, golden lotus, and a few other herbs, and stewed it with firewood. After finishing the snake meal, Jing Yunzhao began to toss the hair again. The place she chose had a water source, so it was easy to clean it up. Qi Yugua looked at her. She was a girl, yet she didn't mind the blood and looked ugly. She peeled off the rabbit's skin and hung it neatly at the side. The meat was fat, fragrant, and tender. She even put a lot of wild mushrooms and wild vegetables that could be seasoned. He couldn't help but feel a little greedy. He had lived for so long, but he had not lived a good life for long. In the past, during the war, he followed the troops every day. To him, the most delicious food was the wild game in the mountains. After eating a lot, he also knew how to cook it himself. He knew how to distinguish some wild mushrooms and use some wild vegetables as flavoring. But after the war ended, he never tasted that kind of delicious food again. When he was in good health, there would be many people following him whenever he went out. Even if he wanted to lower himself to catch rabbits, he would not be in the mood to do so. At this moment, seeing this little girl suddenly make such a meal, he couldn't help but think of the past. He still remembered that Li Junwei liked this kind of thing when he was young. After a while, Qi Yugua opened his mouth and asked, "She was sent by Changsho, right?" Changsho was Li Junwei's nickname. Qi Yugua's trusted subordinate knew this. He immediately nodded and said, "She was also recommended by Dr. Jing Rong. It is said that she is the current head of the Jing family." A little girl who is still in her teens is the head of the family. Chi Yugwa snorted. No wonder Changsho's grandson suddenly came to see him. It was because of her. Isn't there a disciple of the Jing family among that group of doctors? Sending 2 people from one sect is quite a big deal. Chi Yugwa added, "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."